Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, it's not just judges. President Trump is now getting on Fed Chair Jay Powell's case. He's criticizing the Fed for not cutting interest rates right now. But President Trump is getting strong support from an old rival on another battle. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis backs the president's efforts to dismantle the Department of Education. DeSantis says he doesn't see anyone other than Trump really doing something at the federal level. Speaking of education, a new report says Columbia University is very close to giving in to all of President Trump's demands in order to keep $400 million worth of federal funding, but the deadline is apparently today. It's already too late for Columbia's Ivy League rival Penn to claw back the $175 million in federal bucks it has lost as a penalty for promoting men in women's sports. It was Penn swimmer Leah Thomas competing as a woman that started the whole transgender mayhem in the NCAA. And just like clockwork, more left-wing media outlets fall into line promoting the false narratives of real voters supposedly causing mayhem at constituent town halls. All the front pages and website leads won't change the fact that AstroTurf is still phony. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome to another No Tie Friday here on American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for checking us out in Getter, on Rumble. And no, Jay Powell, the Fed chairman, did not go through trans surgery. We had the wrong video there. That happens. My fault there. Joining me now, however, is someone we can always rely on. He is American Sunrise Early Edition political contributor, Dr. James Nuzzo. He's also a former White House staffer. And Jim, I want to start with the story that has developed a lot since we first talked about it. And it's the status of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Now, we know that he's getting a massive amount of pushback within his own party. It looks like they're going to try to unseat him as Minority Leader. But, you know, this is another problem the whole party has, not just in the Senate. Who is their leader right now? But it's getting ugly for Chuck. I guess they'll start with getting rid of him as Minority Leader and then move on. But who would take the reins is what I want to know.
You've asked a very interesting and important question. I mean, you can't just sort of get rid of him. You have to have someone to do it in place. It's the same. This reminds me very much of the conversations that was happening prior to Biden's being thrown off the roof. And we're seeing this happen again. Yesterday was a big day in terms of the movement against Schumer. You had Colorado Senator Michael Bennet come out and basically say, well, the major job of any leader is to count votes. Maybe he ought to start looking and counting votes within his own caucus, and a good leader also know when it's time to leave. This is very bad. Michael Bennet is not Elizabeth Warren. Michael Bennet is somebody who is considered within the caucus to be a voice of moderation and reason. And the fact that he's lost Michael Bennet and that Michael Bennett's gone public, if I'm Chuck Schumer, I'm really getting nervous.
Yeah, and I think this goes beyond just the fumbled shutdown. I mean, a week ago, we were talking about shutdown, any minute now shutdown. And we talked last week about how that was a tremendous fumble by Schumer. You know, either do the shutdown or don't, but threatening to do it and then backing down gives you all the negative publicity of being someone who would shut down the government at this point for no good reason without actually doing it. So that was a big fumble. But we got a lot of other topics. I want to talk about another campus detention and potential deportation case going on right now. Georgetown grad student and instructor. You know, a lot of grad students also instruct undergrad classes. His name is Badar Khan Suri. Now, the Trump administration says he has close ties to Hamas. A federal judge is putting his deportation on hold, of course, as she reviews his petition to stay here. I think a lot of Americans want to know why someone working with a terrorist group who isn't a citizen gets to stay here and gets this kind of long review. But Jim, the thing that's interesting to me about this case is this is not someone who started protests like the guy up at Columbia. This is someone who might just be a real confidant or maybe even a Hamas operative even if he were a citizen, right, Jim, that could lead to being jailed, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I think that the larger issue has to do with the rot within the universities. If you think Columbia is a very bad case, Columbia is like a pinprick. Georgetown is rife and has been for the past, decade and a half of very left-wing, very, very pro-Palestinian folks. Since this new president, or now is no longer new, this president of Georgetown, Jack DeGioia, came into place, he has been inviting radical Islamists not only to come and teach, but to set up institutes, to get professors there. Georgetown is rife with the amount of anti-Semitism and pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas sort of thinking. Now, Columbia lost $400 million. That's out of a large amount of money for Columbia. They will hurt. They will not die. Georgetown survives in large part about the fact that it knows how to go and get government grants. I know. I did my medical school at Georgetown. This is not something which I don't know. And if all of a sudden you found out that Georgetown was starting to lose their money because of, again, this is endemic to Georgetown. If they were to lose their money because of what is in Georgetown, you could have a university on the brink and could actually fold.
Well, my father got his PhD there. They called him back a number of times to try to help them because there were some people in the university who saw what was happening there. They tried to push back on it, but as you say, they lost. All right, more law and order right now. Attorney General Pam Bondi has now charged 3 people arrested for arson attacks on Teslas, and she's charged them with domestic terrorism. She says they're part of a coordinated effort, and they face 20 years in prison each. Is this a good deterrent or not, or are these people just beyond any reason?
Well, the person who's going and throwing the Molotov cocktail or smashing in the window of a Tesla with a brick, big deal. I think the reason why Bondi is taking this on is she must be seeing through some of the intercepts that the NSA has with international groups, particularly, and again, this is just what I've read, I don't know if this is true, with Soros's people, that this is actually a coordinated effort that's happening at the highest levels. If I was Pam Bondi, I'm not caring about the person who puts in the Molotov cocktails. I'm hoping that the local DA will do that. If, on the other hand, she's able to demonstrate that this is part of an international conspiracy in order to bring down Elon Musk, then she's got something. And yeah, you're going to start seeing some very big names fall.
Now, I don't want to give people any ideas, but the idea that this is just about being angry about a particular policy and they're choosing something physical that they can target, I'm sorry, that can't really be the whole story, because we've had President Trump in office and he's got a lot of hotels and other properties. And yes, there has been some vandalism there, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. And so this tells me there. And also, this is also happening at the same time, Jim, that there's a massive, massive explosion, no pun intended, in the electric car industry. Everyone is making new electric cars. And so suddenly the number one electric car maker is getting targeted. I feel like there may be a lot more than just politics behind this. And I agree. I think if there's somebody, again, some political group that's behind it, but there may be dollars coming from other sources as well. This is to say this is highly suspicious is one thing, but it's all fun and games until somebody really gets hurt. If this continues, I don't think I have to be a genius, and I'm not trying to be a downer, but someone's going to get killed. And then you're going to have somebody who's going to have to really go to jail for a long time.
I'm going to dox myself now. I own a Tesla. I've owned a Tesla for 7 years. I owned it when it was a left-wing car. Now I own it as a right-wing car. It's kind of funny. I always just liked the car. I read this and and I live in an area which is very, very blue. And I've got to tell you, I make very carefully sure as to where I park the car anytime. It doesn't get parked on the street, even when I'm going to meetings. It's always parked in a place in which it's going to be watched.
Oh, my goodness. Well, maybe you have to get one of those bumper stickers that you can remove that says, I'm just a Tesla owner, not political, but good luck with that. All right, finally, we had an executive order
but they're watching your show.
Trump. Oh, I know. Well, that's okay. No one's following it. Don't worry about it. I'll give out your address later. Finally, we had an executive order signed by President Trump yesterday instructing Education Secretary Linda McMahon to begin to dismantle the education department. It wasn't exactly as clear as I think some people thought it was going to be, but I feel like maybe that executive order came up just a little bit short of calling for an outright shutdown now, because maybe President Trump wants to work with Congress on this. He's going to have to work with Congress anyway about it, but maybe he wanted to start that process at the beginning rather than having them come to him and getting the courts. And the courts are going to get involved anyway, but I have a feeling this was a little bit of an open door. Do you have the same feeling?
Well, you have to remember that, unlike foreign aid, which was first done by an executive order, DOE was created by legislation. As enabling legislation is indeed a law that was passed by Congress. President Trump can't just abolish it with the stroke of a pen. Now, what he can do is zero it out in his budget and threaten to veto any budget that comes from Congress that has money for it. I think it's also much more symbolic than it is real, because the vast majority, 87 or 89% of all the money that DOE does, basically is a pass-through for student loans. Those student loans are still going to be taken care of. Again, in order to be able to stop student loans, you need legislation. So whether it's DOE that's doing that or somebody else, it doesn't matter. Now, what he can do is shut down those very, very nasty offices within DOE. That's something that Secretary McMahon can do. And that actually will have some real saliency. But as you pointed out, you don't get on the news for saying, I'm closing down the office of such and such, and I'm closing down the office of such and such. You say, I'm closing down the Department of Education. You and I both know that's fine. It is DOA. But so is also saying that you're going to impeach judges. That's DOA as well.
Right. Well, political and legal contributor, also a doctor, James Nuzzo. By the way, his mother wanted him to be a plumber, so don't be that impressed. Anyway, James Nuzzo, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right, coming up. Penn could have made the whole transgender in sports thing stop in its tracks. But instead it allowed Leah Thomas to compete in women's swimming. And things have been a mess ever since. Now the Trump administration is exacting a big price for it all. And when all the legacy media outlets, papers, channels, websites lead with the same story, it's a good chance that you're looking at evidence of a coordinated AstroTurf campaign of baloney. I'll have the latest on how the town hall chaos narrative is developing when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Beautiful shot not too far from me here in Port Jefferson. That's Port Jefferson on Long Island. By the way, not far from where this shot is an amazing ice cream shop with a huge Trump banner on the roof, and the ice cream is amazing. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to the Getter and Rumble folks. Checking you out in the chat. Well, I tried to warn everyone in America yesterday not to buy this baloney, these baloney stories about supposedly real voters disrupting the town halls held by Republican members of Congress around the country. It's not true. There has been a lot of evidence now that the people coming into these town halls and being disruptive are paid actors, basically. A lot of them not even from the districts. The whole thing is manufactured. Yesterday, 2 days ago, the Washington Post did a front page story about how Republicans are running and hiding because of all these angry voters. So, of course, the Washington Post was given a tip that these people are being sent in to do this. The Washington Post covers it, and just like little lemmings, yesterday you had on the front pages of CNN.com and on MSNBC.com and a bunch of other outlets, they also made it a story. Let me ask you an important question. Even if this were true, even if there were constituents at 4 or 5 town halls, real constituents, not actors, causing a mayhem, would that be the top story in America after what's going on right now with all the things that are happening? It's such a tip-off. They got greedy. You want to bury that on page 2 or a little further down, maybe you would have gotten away with it. But the lead story, front page of the Washington Post, really? Front page on CNN.com, which, by the way, gets a lot more traffic than the regular CNN television station. The website gets a lot more traffic. They put that as their top story. It's such a giveaway. Don't fall for it. All right. The Trump administration is cutting, or at least pausing, $175 million in funding for the University of Pennsylvania for allowing biological males to take part in women's sports. Now, here's why this is important, because this is not just one of the many schools that's done this. This is all stemming from the Leah Thomas incident that began in 2021. This is when this all started. It was at Penn. You had a male swimmer who wasn't cutting it on the men's team, frankly, decided that he was now a she, and Penn not only allowed this man to go and swim with the women's team, he started to win championships. And all the other women on the team were told, you better not say anything about this or we will kick you off the team and maybe even expel you. By the way, the news yesterday that President Trump was pulling this kind of money from Penn was greeted with cheers from the people who used to have to be on Leah Thomas's team. The women at Penn, who have now graduated, they cheered this because for them, this was a personal hell that they'll never be able to erase. Their collegiate athletic careers were stolen from them, pure and simple. All right. Speaking of Ivy League schools and big bucks, Columbia is reportedly very close to meeting the Trump administration's demands to improve the protection of Jewish students on campus so it can keep $400 million in funding that the White House is threatening to pull for good. Now, the demands are interesting. They include banning masks. Oh, boy, I wish that was all over the country. Empowering campus police, who are told very often just to stand on the sidelines, and putting the school's Middle East, South Asian, and African studies departments under academic receivership, which means it would no longer be controlled by the faculty, it would be controlled by the president of the university. These are things that we should get at every university in America. Faculty tenure is an overused, unnecessary perk given to these radicals. They then can never be fired. That's the core of the problem here. Hopefully Columbia can be an example for everyone else if they follow these recommendations from the president in time. All right, a North Dakota jury has ordered the environmental group Greenpeace to pay more than $660 million in damages for defamation and vandalism. They committed this as they tried to stop the Dakota Access oil pipeline construction in North Dakota. Many of you may remember this. There was a pipeline, the Dakota Access, and Greenpeace sent not only outside people to demonstrate, but also to commit vandalism, also to harm the environment. In other words, they felt like they had to burn the village down to save it. These environmentalists, and I put that in quotes, are not environmentalists. When are we going to understand this? They really are just Marxist, anti-capitalist radicals. They tackle the oil companies because the oil companies have money. If they cared about the environment, they wouldn't be trashing it while they try to stop a pipeline. And by the way, pipelines are 1,000,000 times more safe than the environment than moving oil by truck or by train. Ask that town in Canada that was completely incinerated years ago when the train full of crude oil crashed in that town. They are not really environmentalists. Also, I can say the same about feminists as well. They're just men, anti-Republican, anti-capitalist. There are some real feminists and real environmentalists out there, but they're not in Greenpeace, and they don't work for Ms. Magazine. It's as simple as that. All right, coming up. What are Israel's troops and civilians facing right now that the Israeli Defense Forces are back in Gaza trying to finish off Hamas? I'll have more on what we all can do now. And it's the biggest deal in American sports history. The Boston Celtics just sold for a price tag you may not believe, or maybe you will. I'll have that for you when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. We're staying in New York State right here. That's Pulaski, New York, and that water looks cold. I know some people who do like those plunges every morning. I can't do that. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I want to take a look at where the markets are going to begin today, and it looks like we got some red arrows. So yesterday I had President Trump saying that Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, should have cut interest rates on Wednesday. He says that the American people need an interest rate cut right now. Jay Powell didn't exactly rule them out. He said there's going to be a couple probably this year. I don't know if with the inflation that we're seeing right now, we should have any cuts, actually. I think that if you want to have relief for the American people, we should do more things like the Trump administration did to get egg prices down. By the way, they're down like 60% in the last couple of weeks. I'm seeing a 3 handle on my eggs prices now instead of the $6 handle. So I'm liking that. But let's take a look at Bitcoin for just a second. Bitcoin, we had that a moment ago. I think it's at the 80. It's still in the 80s, 83,900. So Bitcoin is moving along right there. Definitely still in that holding pattern, though. It's really interesting because usually it's a lot more volatile. All right. A group led by private equity executive William Chisholm is buying the Boston Celtics for $6.1 billion. It is the most money ever paid for a North American pro sports team. Chisholm is a Massachusetts native. He's a lifelong Celtics fan. Hey, the league still has to approve this deal for it to become official. Something now that I think that we all need to understand about this and why this is a big deal is that while the Celtics are pretty much probably the most valuable NBA team, like the LA Lakers might be, pretty close. The Knicks are probably pretty close. They are not anywhere near the most valuable pro sports team. The New York Yankees and the Dallas Cowboys are usually valued much higher than the Boston Celtics. So if the Celtics are going for $6 billion, you got to think the Yankees are at $10 billion. You got to think that the Dallas Cowboys are at $12 billion. This is a huge explosion over their valuations from just 10 years ago, or maybe even just 5 years ago. I grew up in a world where they used to tell you that the pro sports teams owners were basically losing money all the time they bought a team. It was a vanity project for them. It was something they could do to get their friends and neighbors into a corporate suite and maybe make money in another way. But now it's clear. Owning a sports team, a professional sports team in America, is a huge moneymaker. Probably always was, but now they can't hide it anymore. And remember, President Trump wanted to be one of the owners, or the owner of the Buffalo Bills. And when that didn't happen, he turned his attention once again to running for the White House and becoming the president of the country. So that was something amazing. All right. Do we have our guest? Control room. Turning now to the Middle East. No, we don't. All right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the Middle East in just a moment. But first, let's go now to Moving America. We've got some amazing auto stories to get to right now. And as we wait for that, we're waiting for that animation. All right, I told you about a week ago that sales of the 2025 gas-powered Mustangs were not doing so well. Well, they're not getting better, and so here come the rebates. Ford is now offering a $1,000 rebate for the V6 Ford Mustang EcoBoost. I don't know what the EcoBoost. I hate when they put that word in there, but all right. And a $2,000 rebate for the V8 powered GT. That's more like it. But by the way, even with that $2,000 rebate, the GT model for this year is still more expensive than last year's model. Uh-oh. All right. Nearly every Tesla Cybertruck, by the way, is being recalled due to a glue defect that can leave part of the truck's trim falling off the side of the vehicle. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is recalling more than 46,000 Cybertrucks. It warns that an exterior panel that runs along the left and right side of the windshield can detach while driving, creating a road hazard. Tesla will replace the panel free of charge. Hey, I don't know if you guys ever follow websites of recalled cars. There's like 70 recalls a day in America. But watch the mainstream media turn this into a major scandal because there's a slight defect with this truck. There's massive recalls every single day. I used to be in financial news, and we had to stop reporting on recalls. Recalls used to be big news in America, but they're so common now, they're really not. But I am just being a journalist, being responsible, telling you about the Cybertruck thing, but I'm trying to also tell you that this is not that unusual. All right. GM's joint venture with a Canadian company to make commercial electric vans is failing badly. A massive unsold glut of bright drop delivery vans, as they're called, are simply being parked on GM lots on both sides of the U.S.-Canadian border. GM is reportedly offering tens of thousands of dollars in rebates on the largest model. The extended range of the bright drop van, by the way, it far surpasses its market competitors, but so does its price. Before incentives, the vehicles cost about $74,000 each, and the competitor Ford's E-Transit van, for example, is only $51,000. So you do the math. That's not going to work. All right, and speaking of steep price tags, we now know the MSRP for the final edition Toyota Supra GSA90, and it's $155,000 and $800 on top of that, $155,800. To put that into more perspective, it's more than $15,000 more than the base Porsche 911 Carrera and $1,200 more than the new 911 Carrera T. But hey, the Supra is super cool, and I really wanted that car when I was in high school, by the way. All right, let's get back now to the situation in the Middle East. We have our guest right now. Turning to that renewed fighting, Israel's defense forces are now trying to finish off Hamas in a way that it was not really allowed to do under the Biden team. But that effort means more of Israelis civilians are under renewed and deliberate attack. Joining me now is Rabbi Uriel Vigler from the group Belev Echad. And Rabbi, the last time you joined me here, you told me that you were working very hard with wounded soldiers and soldiers that are dealing with PTSD. What is the biggest need right now?
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. Well, I can tell you what's happening right now in New York. We have a couple of soldiers here as we speak. I'll tell you just one story. The soldier by the name of Roy, he was injured 25 years ago on the Lebanon border. And he had an injury called CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome. It's immense pain. It's also called suicide's disease. Basically, people who haven't want to commit suicide. And for years, he's going around with this pain until 6 years ago, he decided to amputate his leg because he just couldn't have it anymore. And even after he amputated his leg, he was still in so much pain from phantom pain. We flew him down here to New York, where we partnered up with NYU, and he underwent surgery in New York, and he's back to new. He's pain-free. This is after 25 years. So this is one of the things we're doing here in New York to treat these wounded soldiers. You talk about the Gaza war. The war has, there's 2,000 soldiers that are in our family that we are helping all the time.
All right. Well, I know you're trying to provide aid to people who really need it. But, that includes people like former Israeli hostage Eli Sharabi. And I want to talk about a different kind of wound because he told the UN yesterday what happens to the aid that American taxpayers, all of us watching, send to Gaza. Well, no surprise. Hamas steals it. He saw it with his own eyes. Do you think, Rabbi, that the American people are beginning to see the light about this?
I do. I think American people are good people. Americans are amazing people. In fact, Belev Echad is supported primarily by Americans, Jews, non-Jews. We're all in this war together. There is a horrible, just 2 nights ago I was with a soldier here having dinner with him, with a wounded soldier. His leg was amputated. And he told me his brother is right now in Gaza, just drafted into Gaza with this new ground operation, and he's very worried. I mean, we have to do what's necessary. We need American support to do what's necessary, but we will eradicate this evil from our midst, because make no mistake, if we don't, they'll just sprout back out, and we have to release our hostages as well. This is what we got to do.
I don't know how much of a communication you're talking a lot with the soldiers, but I wonder if you're communicating with a lot of Israeli civilians, because they're getting it from all sides. After the United States hit the Houthi rebels in Yemen the other day, the Houthi rebels in Yemen fired a missile towards Jerusalem, which is not something that Hamas does all that often. Usually they attack Tel Aviv. The Houthis don't seem to even have that courtesy, because remember, Jerusalem is a very holy place for Muslims as well, and the third most holy sites in all of Islam. They don't seem to care. I wonder, is there anything that you ever help regular civilians, or just by helping the soldiers, do you learn about how also to help civilians in Israel who are dealing with this?
First of all, I have a daughter who's studying in seminary in Jerusalem. I actually have a brother who's an orthopedic hand surgeon in Petach Tikva. And, both of them sent me alerts at 4 a.m. Israeli time that they have to go down to the Mamad, down to the bomb shelter. This week it happened multiple times. And I mean, this is crazy. This is my daughter. And my daughter, she takes it like Israelis. They take it very lighthearted, and they're very like, okay, our sleep is disturbed again by the Houthim, But this is crazy. This is insane. No normal country would allow this to happen. We have to just destroy this evil from our midst. Now, many of our soldiers are now civilians. That's what they are. They were wounded in battle. They are now not in the army anymore, so they are civilians, and we are helping them. This is what we do. The PTSD, by the way, is crazy. The flashbacks from these missiles that come out is terrible. It's terrible. But make no mistake, we are strong. We will prevail. We will fight. And a little bit of light dispels all this darkness. So it's also a spiritual war. We need to do what's called mitzvot, commandments. We need to do good in the world. When you spread good, it dispels all this darkness, all this evil.
No, I know that the American Jewish and Christian communities are all behind you. Thank you, Rabbi Uriel Vigler from Belev Echad. Have a good Shabbat and a peaceful one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants, the website is belevechad.nyc. BELEVECHAD.NYC. Get involved. Throw your support to our wounded soldiers. We love you guys.
Thank you so much for telling us that website. All right, coming up. Forget about all the fancy cars that you see. The rest of us slobs have to take the subway in New York City. I've got the latest on an effort to at least make it safe from crime. And the clock is ticking. With $400 million at stake, will Colombia meet President Trump's guidelines to fight anti-Semitism before tonight's deadline? American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back.
the vamp there.
It's Friday, March 21st. Here are some of this morning's top story. It's a terrorism case right now as AG Pam Bondi charges 3 men with domestic terrorism, that they were allegedly part of a coordinated effort to set Teslas on fire in multiple locations. The Trump team is giving New York's Kathy Hochul, she's the governor, one last chance to get rid of that congestion pricing toll in Manhattan. 49 other state governors and every taxpayer in America should pay close attention to this. The president's trying to save you some money. Speaking of education, a new report says Columbia University is very close to giving in to all of President Trump's demands in order to keep that $400 million worth of federal funding. But the deadline is apparently today. And President Trump is getting strong support from an old rival. It's another battle this time. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis backs the president's effort to dismantle the Department of Education. DeSantis says he doesn't see anyone other than Trump really doing something at the federal level. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to a No Tie Friday here on American Sunrise Early Edition. Let's get right to a couple of these big stories. With New York State Assemblyman Jake Blumenkrantz. Jake, you have introduced a new bill aimed at making the New York City public transit system, which every American taxpayer is paying a lot for, by the way. If you're not in New York, don't tune this out. Your money's going for this thing. You want to make it more safe. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So we have a compact with the American people. Make sure that our streets are safe, that our roads are paved, and that you can live your life, freely and with prosperity. We are not meeting that mandate on the subway. As far as the taxpayers go, we're given lip service from the MTA, told that we're going to build every project, around budget. We're going to make sure everything runs perfectly, and we're going to fix the crime issue. She called for the National Guard to be patrolling the subways because it was so safe in her city. So it seems ridiculous to me that she thinks that crime stats are down. She's been cherry picking data to show how great she's been doing at reducing crime, but yet the laws she created are what created a crime wave in the first place. So we created legislation that would essentially attach strings to the funding the state gives the MTA, just like Secretary Duffy wants to do on a federal level. It's time that we start creating accountability before we hand over your tax dollars to unaccountable administrative organizations like the MTA.
Yeah, I want to talk about Sean Duffy, the Transportation Secretary, in just a second. But this is something, again, that I think all Americans should understand. Now, I grew up in the South mostly, but came to New York around high school time. And crime in the subway and the streets of New York back then was property related. In other words, it was people trying to rip off a gold chain, purse snatching. And that had nothing to do, by the way, with economics. A rich person will rob from you just as much as a poor person. But that was easy to spot. But Assemblyman Blumenkrantz, I think what we're dealing with now is also violent, mentally ill people, and also people who are responding to illegal drugs. And this is a much bigger problem than it was 40, 50 years ago, because it's not as easy to spot. Well, it's easy to spot, but it's not as easy to prosecute, because you bring them into the system and they need a lot of counseling. This isn't just someone who ripped up off a purse to go buy drugs or to go to a concert. So, I mean, you're dealing with some new challenges, aren't you?
Yeah, the mental health crisis keeps getting worse in New York. We're trying to look at solutions in which we can add funding, add beds, reintroduce some of the inpatient concepts that we had many years ago. You'll see in New York, in many of these major cities, we moved to this outpatient notion that, we're going to let everyone who commits crimes with mental health issues back onto the streets instead of treating them inpatient, making sure that they have a place to go, a place to stay, being held if they're attacking people on the street. Those policies have changed. And what we didn't do was create new concepts, new ways, new areas in which they would receive funding for mental health services on the streets. So what you have is you have a bunch of people who are mentally ill who are wreaking havoc. And we need to put an end to that. We need to see a collaborative effort to stop that concept from continuing to wreak havoc on the city, and we need to look at new ways in which we can tackle crime without these crazy laws that have been created by the Democrats.
Yeah, it would be nice also if you didn't try to arrest people. If New York didn't try to put people in jail like Daniel Penny, who were trying to protect people from mentally ill folks on the subway. All right, Assemblyman, you mentioned Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy because he is giving New York Governor Kathy Hochul a little bit more time now to end this congestion pricing toll, which, by the way, is a war on the working poor. That's what this is. How do you think this is going to play out? Do you think she's going to come to heel on this?
I think they're at negotiation stages. As I mentioned previously on your show, I am taking the governor to court, to federal court, to sue her over the merits of her case. Now, even though he's given an extension, I think that is a positive thing because, A, it means that the governor and the federal government want to collaborate. They want to come to a conclusion in which she has to turn off these tolls and she has to create accountability on the subway, create a safer space for New Yorkers. I think that's what Secretary Duffy and President Trump want here. I think it's what everyone wants here. The question is the governor willing to play ball with them over there? What I will say is that our case is still live. We still plan on suing the governor. We still plan on having our day in court, and we still plan on going over the merits of our case when it is our day in court, because we believe that she's violating federal law. And I think she knows that too, which is why she's willing to negotiate.
Yeah, well, and also, look, the money from congestion pricing is going to go maybe to pay for the pensions of retired MTA workers. It's not going to make the roads better, and it's not going to make the subway safer. All right, let's go to another topic here because, Assemblyman, you're on record saying that New York Democrats talk a good game when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism, but they don't actually act. How do you think they can respond to the situation at Columbia where the Trump team is demanding real action to stop anti-Semitism? Remember, Chuck Schumer advised Columbia last year to do nothing. Remember, he told them, don't do anything. You don't have to do a better job of protecting your Jewish students. We'll beat this. Is there anything they're going to do differently if Columbia actually does the right thing here and meets Trump's demands?
Well, I can tell you this. There's not one person, I think, the Jewish community that I run into in my district is more ashamed of and more saddened with than Senator Chuck Schumer and his response to everything in the last 500 plus days since January 7th and the massive increases in anti-Semitism. Nobody has been a worse ally to the Jewish people than a man who once was considered an ally. So it's a shame and it's sad. But what I will say is this. President Trump, like with congestion pricing and safety on the subway, like with anti-Semitism on campuses, he made election promises that he wants to see through. If we are handing blank checks to institutions, if we are handing blank checks to organizations like the MTA, and we are not asking for the simple things we want, safety on campuses, safety on the subway. He is willing to fight the fight for everyone who wants to see the same thing we do. Safe schools for Jewish students, not so hard. Schools in Florida and in Texas, they managed to implement policies that make their campuses just fine. They do not allow the same sort of aggressive stances that students take during their protests that make it inherently unsafe to be on campus as a Jewish student. I was there, I was on campus, I saw how bad it gets. And I cannot and will not stand by and let individuals say it'll get better on its own, because it won't, and we need intervention.
You know, I want to broaden this out because you touched on a very interesting point that I think the administration is making pretty clear, but they can make it even clearer, and I think you just did it for them. Look, you're a state assemblyman. I mean, this is you're in state government, and we're talking about federal government. But you have a president now that, whether we're talking about the situation at Columbia, whether we're talking about the streets of Manhattan, and there are so many other states as well dealing with stories that have nothing to do with New York, where this president has said your local representatives, whether at the state or city level, are failing you, and I'm here to try to fix that. You really haven't had that ever really happen. You've had people say, well, the state and local leaders can't fix it. It's not their fault. I'm going to try to help. You've never had a president to basically call them out and say they have failed, and now I'm going to come in and do whatever is in my power to do. Now, I'm sure that you're cheering, as I am, the two issues that we just talked about. But as a state representative, how do you take a look at that? I mean, is this something that you would like to see the federal government, or at least presidents in the future, start to do when you're up against it, up in Albany? You know, you're a minority there. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because that's your territory in a way.
Well, I have pause at times. I think if you look at the famous Reagan quote, I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help, are the scariest words you can hear. we still have to keep that mindset. I'm still a small government guy, and I don't believe the federal government should come in and railroad through everything that a state is trying to do. I don't, because I think you saw it on the other side, to the other side of the aisle when it came to Texas and Florida, when they tried to implement policies that we appreciate. At the end of the day, this sort of an issue needs to be settled in the courts. And I think that the best and easiest way that we can continue to make government work better for the people is to compromise and to come together and to realize what the individuals in our states want and try and implement those policies, even if it's not what a party may want. And if we start thinking, how can we better serve the people and not how can we better serve ourselves, we as a state and as a country can do much better.
Well, good for you for not being so much in the political class bubble. Only the political class bubble cares about who signs off on improvements. The voters and normal people just want to see improvements, and we don't really care whether it's the federal government, the president, or an assemblyman. Check out Jake Blumenkrantz. He's an assemblyman from New York State. He's got a lawsuit. He's also got a bill to try to make the MTA safer. This is actually something the whole country needs to watch. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Jake. You too.
All right, speaking of Chuck Schumer, we were just talking about him. It gets worse. He came face to face with left-wing evil the other night. Do you think he was surprised when he came to face with it? He wasn't. David Brody and I will talk about that when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back.
We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe. Oh, baby.
Welcome back to an all-new season of Law and Border. We have Ben Berkwam and Oscar Ramirez to take you on an unprecedented journey to show you all 8 ports of entry from the Mexico side of the border.
There's a lot of activity right here that is going on.
Our fearless frontline reporters will be starting out in Mexico City. Then they'll head north to the Gulf of Mexico, now named the Gulf of America, and all the way across to the Pacific Ocean and Tijuana. Keep in mind, all the while, they'll be passing through multiple cartel territories. And these areas are patrolled by heavily armed cartel criminals.
Keeping the camera down just for we're in a very hot zone.
And the only network to take you there is Real America's Voice News. So strap in, because Season 5 of Law and Border begins now.
Don't tell anyone we're coming.
Morning is becoming here in New York City. Have no fear in New York City. President Trump is coming to do the jobs that our local politicians aren't doing. Speaking of that, Chuck Schumer, you think we beat up on him enough? No, we haven't, because it just gets worse. He went on MSNBC earlier this week only to have phony intellectual host Chris Hayes present him with the defense of Hamas. Chris Hayes defended Hamas using human shields, saying everyone would do that. That's what everyone would do. Wrong. That's not true. Joining me right now is David Brody. I know you're going to be talking about this, and you're going to be playing that full soundbite on American Sunrise on your show later this morning. But I want to do a little bit of a preview here because, to me, there's a wider issue. Chuck Schumer, this could be, if I were writing a novel, I'd be talking about how Chuck Schumer had that moment with Chris Hayes, and he finally realized he had this aha moment. Oh, my God, this is who I'm in bed with. This is the left in America. They're defending. But you know what? I think that Chuck Schumer has known this for many years. It's just in public now. I don't think he learned anything from this. He's known who he's been working with for a long time. This was no revelation for him. But maybe, David, it's a revelation for some people who supported Chuck Schumer. Maybe.
It's such a great point. He's enabled the whole thing. And you're right. He's sitting across from Chris Hayes going, wait, oh, my gosh, I'm to the right of Chris Hayes. What is going on? How in the world did that happen? Well, Schumer's been relatively okay. Now, let me do tons of disclaimers and a lot of asterisks. Relatively okay back in the day on Israel. But after October 7th, he came out with a big show of support and then went womp womp, Netanyahu is the devil. And, well, he's always been saying Netanyahu is the devil. But look, it's fascinating to me. I could spend so much time on this topic because what Chris Hayes was saying specifically, which, by the way, what was he saying exactly? Let me get this straight. There's not enough room in Gaza to figure out where not to put the weapons and arsenal and underground tunnels. Like, the only place to put it is at a Chuck E. Cheese in Gaza, so to speak. I mean, come on, give me a freaking break. I mean, unbelievable, the apologies that Chris Hayes and others make for these folks. But it reminds me, I'll be honest with you, of my Jewish upbringing. I grew up in a Reformed Jewish household. I've got a lot of family members. And like I say, as they say in the South, bless their heart, I'm going to love my family. But they're off the reservation when they talk about the poor Palestinians, and this is just terrible, and what the Jews are doing to the Palestinians. And I'm like, oh, hold on for a second. A, read your Bible, and B, can we have a larger discussion about this? No. Chris Hayes was raised Catholic, actually, but believe it or not, then he decided not to attend church services anymore. And his father was a community organizer, and he went into liberal, whatosphere. So this is the same type of secular mindset that has no earthly idea of what's really going on. And by the way, Chris Hayes loves to use 4, 5, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 syllable words to make him look like this intellectual when he really has no common sense and no biblical common sense for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a big giveaway. When people are talking to a larger audience, use very big words, it means that they're trying. It's kind of like when you're doing baloney on an essay test and you don't know the answer. Very, very good point. And for those of you watching who are saying, oh, but what about all those religious wars? And don't get into the body count game with David Brody and Jake Novak. The secular Soviet Union, North Korea, China, their body count just in the last 200 years exceeds the entire history of religious wars. Don't forget that. Don't fall for that argument. Got a lot of problems in religion. I get it. But don't do the body count game with me and David because we'll beat you. Hey, we're going to have a better thing than just body counts coming up on American Sunrise, the big show. David is going to be joined by T. Bates, and I think Dr. Gina as well. Have a great weekend, everybody.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
Okay, so we're ready to get rid of the DOE?
Oh, that's for sure. And to be clear, before people start running out, not here on this with our audience, but start running out and looking at MSNBC and all the crazy scare tactics that they do. when this comes out today, we're going to hear about all of this money kind of going back to the states, but also this, which you will not hear on MSNBC. The White House summary says it's going to continue to ensure the effective, here we go, and uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely. So this idea that, oh no, the sky is falling. No, services that the DOE provides will still be going on. It's just a matter of transferring it over to the states where it belongs.
And Allison, just to be clear, that today's executive order that we're expecting President Trump to sign doesn't ultimately do away with the Department of Education. Ultimately, Congress would have to act in order to completely do away with it.
This is going to empower these states and these local districts to kind of shift that money in places that better helps the students and gets the federal government out of the classroom.
The parents are suffering right now. Actually, kids are suffering, and therefore the parents are getting very frustrated, and many are just losing hope. So we're going to get back to where this is important. This is a national security issue. This should be top of mind for us if we want to keep our country. We have to make sure our kids are smart, productive, and proud of who we are.
President Trump's recent interview with Fox's Laura Ingraham led to the president labeling Canada as, quote, one of the nastiest countries to deal with. Just nasty. Take a look.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We have a lot of lumber. We freed it up, as you know, last week. We're freeing it up so that you can actually cut down a tree without being, given the death penalty.
The faces they show to Donald Trump, it's clear they've never been in a room with a president who says, no, that deal's not good enough for my people. It's weird to watch them kind of react in real time to an America First president.
Dr. Gina was in that crowd ringing the opening bell at the NASDAQ this morning.
You can see my husband, John, and my son, Bo Loudon, very clearly. And I'll tell you what, we were just honored to get to be a part of this amazing morning. Only about 150 companies get to do this per year. So it was a huge honor to get to be part of Wellgistics morning here. And I believe, as you know, we're going to have the CEO, Brian Norton of Wellgistics, on tomorrow morning. So that'll be really fun to have him on the show as well.
So call 1-800-693-3440 or visit duckback.com.
Ahead on American Sunrise, America doesn't need a Department of Education. President Trump lets it be known it's just another agency in the swamp. Much more on the major executive order to do away with the DOE coming out. Plus, so long and good riddance. The brothers of the Venezuelan illegal convicted of killing Laken Riley get deported. We'll discuss. And speaking of draining the swamp, the Trump administration is exposing government corruption. Find out what's being uncovered. Those stories and so much more right now on American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina. Good Freedom Friday morning. I'm Dr. G. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C., and T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen. TGIFF. Freedom Friday.
Okay. I was like, wait, what?
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm glad you cleared that up because I was like,
Where's she going?
Welcome back after doing that toll bell. That ding, ding, ding. Gina's in the house. Gotta like that. Oh, that was phenomenal. Sorry, I can't keep thinking about it.
Lots of fun. Yeah, it's a bucket list thing. When someone calls and says you want to do that, the answer is always yes. You want to ring the bell if you get to do it. Lots of fun and great little jaunt out to New York. Nice. And you guys for great support. Thanks so much again.
And guys, I just realized that I might need a little counseling because I'm still holding on to a bit of anger against that woman who was standing in front of Dr. Gina. I still am like, lady, we did all of this work for you to stand in front of Dr. Gina and for us only to be able to make her out by that beautiful blonde hair and a wave. I was like, lady, you messed up the whole day.
I'm sure. You're going to have to take that one up with God, Terrance.
Okay, sure. Lord, please help her. Give her some extra heels, Lord. Hey, guys, so look, there's a lot to talk about this morning. I think a lot of people still talking about President Trump signing that executive order yesterday to dismantle the Department of Education. I think what was interesting, guys, is that, yes, he's taking steps to do away with the actual department, but still keeping processes in place to make sure that local communities, that the states have the resources they need to still be able to operate properly, David.
Yeah, and student loans are not going anywhere. Pell Grants are not going anywhere. Title I, you're going to hear a lot about Title I, right? Title I funding for economically disadvantaged kids, and the liberals are going to scream and say, get ready, Title I is going to be dismantled. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, they've actually not only said that, but it's actually congressionally mandated. So you can't just get rid of Title I funding. And Title I funding, of course, is for those economically disadvantaged kids across the country. Not happening. What is going to happen is, Gina, is those DEI programs within the Department of Education, well, that's going to be one of the things to be gonzo under this executive order.
Look, David, I don't know if I believe you because Chicken Noodle News told me that all of that was going away and there were going to be American children starving in the street. And it was going to be the worst thing for women and children ever. And that President Trump basically just wants to murder them all. I think that's what they said, something along those lines. Yeah. No, the truth of the matter is, yes, of course, the liberals are going to go into apoplexy over this. You can just cue that, right? But the reality is, some of these things should go away. Because government, that is not the role of government. That is the role of churches. That is the role of charities. That is the role of neighbors and friends and family. And when you get back to the days where neighbors, friends, families, churches, and charities handle things like taking care of those who are downtrodden, right? Then guess what? Everybody's better for it. Everybody's better for it. It's hands-on. It's looking the person in the eye who has the need. It's the accountability of being pulled up by the bootstraps by somebody who actually cares about you rather than a government. So, it needs to change. It needs to change. But you're right. It doesn't take away any of that.
Dr. Gina, you're describing, or what you just described is it takes a village. I'm taking some artistic license, but what you just described is that it really takes a village. And it just reminds me of something that the pastor who married me shared. He said, yeah, it takes a village, but remember, every village has an idiot as well. So be cautious.
And sometimes multiple idiots.
Sometimes the person
that has stuck with me for 25 years. I love that saying. Anyway, Dr. Gina, let's get to our Bible verse, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it. It's from Isaiah today, chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, and it goes a little something like this. It says, behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord is my strength and song. He also has become my salvation. Therefore, with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. He is the living water. And let's never forget how much we need him every single day in our lives just like water. Let's kick off this Freedom Friday morning with RAV Chief White House correspondent Brian Glynn, who joins us now. I can't get over the fact that we have him there. I'm so excited every day when he comes, that just the freedom that has opened up to independent media, having folks like Brian there on the White House lawn. Brian, good morning. Brian, the president signed the executive order, which basically shuttered the Board of Education. What happens now to American education? How can you educate all of the leftist media who are pearl clutching about all the people that are going to starve to death and die because President Trump hates them?
Yeah, I was just reading, good morning, Dr. Gina. I was just reading an article from Ron Flipakowski that just claims the world's going to come to an end because of this and all of the misinformation that's being pushed out on this, when in fact the opposite is going to happen. It's going to actually empower and give the resources to these schools, these 98,000 schools and thousands of public school districts, to have the tools, the resources to do better. I was going to ask President Trump yesterday that, being a successful businessman, someone that has developed numerous corporations, successful corporations, could this in fact be the worst ROI on $3 trillion spent by a government, by a business, when in fact we rank at the bottom of the list on education factors across the world? So this is a good day, making ways, and of course Linda McMahon will begin that, of basically taking apart this this government agency, and we move on to hopefully a little bit better test scores.
Brian, of course, the Board of Education being done away with is the big sexy story this morning. But I want to turn a bit to illegal immigration, as the brothers of the man who killed Laken Riley are set to be deported. Authorities say that they were sentenced to prison and deportation after pleading guilty to having a fake green card. Their brother, of course, was here illegally as well and committed at least one heinous crime that we know of. It seems to me that this is yet another win for President Trump's mass deportation plan, and another example of why this is such an urgent issue. This is a public safety issue. It's not just an illegal immigration issue.
Yeah, it is. They also had fake Social Security cards on them as well. So not just fake green cards. They had several other documents. Look, this is just another step that Tom Homan and really Kristi Noem and everyone in this Trump administration is doubling down on this illegal immigration, these drug cartels. I wish the media would spend more time documenting the logistics of how these people got into the country, rather than trying to scrutinize the logistics of removing these people from this country. I find it appalling that our mainstream media is more obsessed with the timeline of removing these drug cartel, these gang members from our country. But it's good to see that President Trump is doubling down, his whole administration is, making sure that this country is safe and getting these people out of our country.
Such a great point. It's like, how did they get in the first place? Do your due diligence and spend some sweat equity there, Brian, for sure. Hey, let's talk about what's going on at the White House today. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, will be over inside the Oval Office, I understand. So that's going to be interesting. There'll be some news that'll come out of that with Trump and Hegseth, I guess, making remarks there. And then there's this. Elon Musk apparently is going to visit the Pentagon before that meeting and get some sort of briefing on China. Boy, I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few news headlines written in the next 24 hours about everything that we just talked, that I just said there, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the 11 o'clock meeting with Hegseth and President Trump at 11. Really, there's very little details involved with that. The Trump team has not put out any specific information on what that's about. But as you can imagine, moments after, the world will learn. Then turning our attention to Elon Musk. Now, the New York Times, who I actually gave credit a couple of days ago for coming out with an article about the Department of Education, to their credit, now they've now saying that Musk will be in communication about a potential, I guess, war with China. And of course, the Trump team has said, and President Trump actually said this on Truth Social, that that is absolutely not the truth, or that it's not factual. They're not talking about a war with China. So lots in the news. I think it mainly has to do with making sure, of course, with Doge and Elon Musk and his whole committee, making sure everything is efficient, that we don't have any type of abuse, fraud, and waste within the Pentagon. So we'll see what comes out a little bit later today. But such a busy day here on a Friday. And David, if we're doing the weather and traffic, we got a really brisk 38 degrees, little breeze, so it feels like more like upper 20s. So,
wow, no jacket too. Very impressive.
Hey, Brian, do you have a forecast for
It's blowing on me.
Do you have a forecast for Bedminster, New Jersey? That's where it looks like the president is headed this week and where he'll spend the weekend.
Yeah, he's going to head off a little bit later, around 5 o'clock, go to Joint Base Andrews and fly into Bedminster. He'll spend the weekend there. And actually, he's off to the NCAA Wrestling Championships there over the weekend to check that out. Yeah, so, he's a big fan of the wrestling, big fan of sports in general. If you're an NCAA wrestler, what an honor to be able to perform and compete in front of the president. So props to any athlete out there that's in the tournament this weekend. You're going to do it right there in front of the president. Yeah.
Hey, just really quickly, Brian, I'm sorry, I'm curious. Do you know if Jim Jordan is going to join him, excuse me. Jim Jordan, probably the most popular former NCAA wrestler who's now in politics. Any idea if he's going to join him?
I'll look into that because he often mentions Jim Jordan, and he'll say he's a great wrestler. He's great, but his son can out wrestle him. He loves telling those stories. I'll look into that, but that's an interesting point.
All right. Well, I was a wrestling cheerleader. You guys will be thrilled to know, I'm sure. Like news you really never need to know. But that's how I met my husband, was at a wrestling tournament when he was a wrestler. So there you go. Brian Glenn, thank you so much. I don't know how we got into talking about wrestling, but we sure did. And we're always glad to have you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Have a great week.
Have a great day.
I have a joke about men in tights, but I'll keep it to myself.
Thank you, Terrance. Thank you, Terrance, because we don't know what you're wearing on the bottom.
Filter.
All right, you guys. Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with T. Bates, who is wearing tights on the bottom. And later, what's the biggest threat facing America? China, Russia, ISIS, Iran. All of the above. Well, that discussion is just ahead with a member of one of the president's Homeland Security team. Don't move a muscle. Don't take off those tights. American Sunrise right back on this Freedom Friday in just a moment.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
New York City on a Friday, on a Freedom Friday. By the way, the only thing I can think about at this point is a dead mouse and coffee and men in tights. Literally in the first 15 minutes of the show, we've had references to both. So who knows what the show is going to entail as we move on. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, have you heard illegal immigrants invading at the border? Well, not so much anymore, but under Biden, absolutely. What is the greatest threat to our homeland security? Now that Biden is gone, it's not him, so that's the good news. We'll explore that more with one of the top officials from the Department of Homeland Security. We'll be here in a moment. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
We begin with the story you'll hear a lot about today. President Trump is ordering Education Secretary Linda McMahon to start the process of dismantling the Department of Education. Quote, to the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return authority over education to the states and local communities. That is what his long-awaited executive order on Thursday boils down to.
Sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it, and everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. Title I funding and resources for children with special disabilities and special needs, they're going to be preserved in full and redistributed to various other agencies and departments that will take very good care of them.
Under the order, some of the Department of Education's functions would be moved to other agencies, as you just heard the president say. For instance, Secretary McMahon says since the Department of Justice has a civil rights office, there may be an opportunity to move civil rights-related education issues to the DOJ. The Trump Justice Department has a Tuesday deadline to respond to a federal judge's request for an explanation about its failure to bring deported Venezuelan gang members back to the U.S. after their deportation flights were temporarily blocked. District Judge James Boasberg's order on Thursday escalates his dispute with the administration, which already includes President Trump's call for Boasberg's impeachment and the actual filing of articles of impeachment against the judge. This latest request comes after the judge ruled on Thursday that the administration's current response to what happened after his order blocking those deportation flights is, quote, woefully insufficient. Saturday, Judge Boasberg imposed a 2-week ban on any deportations under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. Despite the decision, 3 planes filled with deportees left the U.S. for El Salvador. ICE officials say the planes were already in the air when the ruling was handed down. The judge believes his order may have simply been ignored, though. An American airline mechanic who was taken by the Taliban while he was traveling as a tourist through Afghanistan is home. George Glesman had been in Taliban captivity for 2 years. The State Department says that his release was brokered in part by Qatari negotiators. After being taken by the Taliban's intelligence services in December of 2022, the U.S. government designated Glesman as wrongfully detained. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is out with a statement this morning saying, in part, George's release is a positive and constructive step. It is also a reminder that other Americans are still detained in Afghanistan. President Trump will continue his tireless work to free all Americans unjustly detained around the world. The 65-year-old is the 3rd American detainee released by the Taliban since January. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming your way here in just a little bit, including the biggest threat facing America. Do you know what it is? In moments, we'll get insight from the Department of Homeland Security. Also ahead, Tesla continues to be the target of what the Trump administration calls domestic terrorists. Even more violence might be directed at Elon Musk's company. We'll investigate. First, though, a quick look at this day in history. on this date in 1980, during the season finale cliffhanger of TV hit show Dallas, that arch villain J.R. Ewing was shot by an unknown assailant. When the shooter episode in the when the shooter was exposed, in the Who Done It episode, it was at the time the highest rated television episode in U.S. history. An estimated 83 million people watched that episode, which was more than the number of voters in that year's presidential election. Unbelievable. Wow. The episode was also an international event with more than 350 million people tuning in to find out who shot JR. A session of the Turkish parliament was even suspended to allow legislators a chance to get home in time to view the conclusion of the cliffhanger. More American Sunrise coming your way in 2 minutes.
At Chicago, I'm a New Yorker, all right? Chicago, though, great city to visit in certain areas. Terrance, I know, we'll talk about it later. Anyhow, who has the better pizza? Oh, don't get started. Don't get started on that. That's called New York pizza. Okay, did I just tick off everybody in Chicago? I apologize. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. All right, here's a sobering question. It has nothing to do with pizza. What is the biggest threat facing the United States right now? Well, take a look at this headline that we're going to show you. Americans feel that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran are all seen as threats to the U.S., but which one is the United States' biggest and most immediate threat? Well, that's a good question, considering Joe Biden is no longer on the scene, because that would be my answer. Anyhow, joining us now with more on that is Tricia McLaughlin. She, of course, is the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. Tricia, great to see you this morning. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Tricia.
Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, look, there are plenty of threats. How does DHS see it? How do they go about handling all this? There's quite a lot on the plate of Secretary Noem and the staff there at DHS.
There really is. There's 23 component offices, and that's anything from CBP and ICE, who, of course, are on the front lines of the immigration crisis. But it's also TSA, protecting Americans at airports, Secret Service, protecting President Trump and America's leaders, FEMA, which there's a question mark there, but we need to get our state and local governments the assistance that they need to face natural disasters. Secretary Noem is doing a phenomenal job taking really a agency that's been dilapidated and demoralized for the last 4 years and getting our workforce back to work and back centered on its mission to protect Americans and protect the homeland.
A lot has been made recently of foreign college students who are here in the United States and really directing some of the protests we saw recently. In fact, you posted this message on X. It says basically that you're explaining kind of that on Monday, immigration authorities detained a Georgetown University graduate, Badar Khansuri. Authorities, of course, detained him outside of his home in Arlington, Virginia. They allege that he has close ties to Hamas and is spreading terrorist propaganda. What is DHS's role in operations like this, and how widespread is this issue? How much of a concern should it truly be for Americans?
Well, Suri, who is a Georgetown student, he was spreading Hamas propaganda, glorifying these terrorists who want to kill Americans. Unfortunately, a ruling just came out down yesterday from a Biden judge who placed an injunction so that this individual cannot be deported. This is under the authority of the Secretary of State. He is deemed that Suri and these other students who support and glorify terrorists undermine American foreign policy issues. Our role at the Department of Homeland Security is to enforce that. If you have a visa revoked, as they should, then that is our role, is to remove them from the country, arrest and deport.
One of the ringleaders of the pro-Hamas coalition at Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil, has made his first public statement since being federally arrested. Khalil says the Trump administration is targeting me as a broader strategy to suppress dissent. Now, Khalil, who was born, of course, in Syria, has been an outspoken pro-Palestinian activist since the Israel-Hamas war broke out. The left says that deporting Khalil violates the First Amendment and puts into question free speech on college campuses. What's your take?
No, of course not. This has nothing to do with free speech. Free speech isn't harassing Jewish students on campus. Free speech isn't defacing buildings, and free speech isn't taking over buildings on campus. If you have pro-Palestinian Jews, that's your First Amendment right. But when you get to the place where you're disrupting campus, you're inciting violence, you're passing out Hamas propaganda, terrorist propaganda that's advocating for the killing of Americans, that goes far beyond free speech. And the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, absolutely has the authority to revoke those visas in the name of national security. And DHS stands by, and we stand ready to remove these terrorist sympathizers from our country. Keep in mind, living and studying in the U.S. on a visa is a privilege. It is not a right. You are not here permanently.
That's exactly right. And there's plenty of ways to remove someone that has a green card for sure. Hey, let me ask you, Tricia, about these Tesla terrorists. That's what we really can call them. Some have been arrested now. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, announcing charges against 3 people who authorities say violently destroyed the cars. I'm curious about DHS and their role in this, or like how they see this domestic terrorism, which is what President Trump and others have called it. How does the DHS kind of maneuver through this area? Because like you don't have enough on your plate. Now you've got this.
Well, DHS and Secretary Christie are tip of the spear when it comes to preventing terrorism in this country. There's no place for political violence. If you disagree with Elon Musk or with Tesla, just don't purchase the cars. But to commit violence or damage or set these cars on fire is absolutely unacceptable. And Secretary Noem has been very clear on this issue, as she has as well been with those false swattings that many conservative influencers have faced, that we will use every tool that DHS has to track down the locations of these individuals, of these cowards, and we will hold them accountable and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
So, look, I want to switch our conversation to the border a bit. A major Trump campaign promise, of course, was securing the border. According to U.S. Border Patrol stats, the number of illegal aliens being caught illegally entering the United States has dropped by a whopping 82%. That's huge. Now, in February, just for context sake, agents arrested about 8,300 illegals who were trying to sneak into the country. During Joe Biden's final month in office, agents apprehended more than 47,000 illegals. That, of course, is according to the New York Times. And then according to the New York Times also, if the Trump administration holds this trend, arrests could plummet to the lowest levels since the mid-1960s. Talk about DHS's focus on illegal immigration and making sure that our borders are secure. And if you could rate kind of how quickly this has been done and the kind of job that you and your colleagues have been able to accomplish there at DHS. I'd love you to comment on that as well.
We'll talk about warp speed. So since President Trump took office and Secretary Noem took office as DHS secretary, border crossings are down 95%. They're actually the lowest in recorded history. And why does that matter so much? Not only is it individuals not trying to cross into the U.S. illegally, but it also frees up our Border Patrol agents to not just be stuck in these processing centers, but be able to actually do their jobs in the field, which means that they have the bandwidth to be catching those individuals who are trying to traffic humans, smuggle drugs, these vicious cartel members. They have the ability to do their jobs better than ever because we've given them the resources and really the leadership to do their job. So I'm very proud of CBP, the men and women there, and I'm very proud to work under Secretary Noem, her leadership, and how quickly she's been able to secure the border.
She has been such a force, Tricia, for sure. I've known her a long time, so has Dr. G. Give her our best. She's doing a great job, and so are you. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Trish. Coming up, President Trump admits there is actually something he admires about Joe Biden. Really? Oh, find out what that is. You're going to like the punchline. But first, the shocking before and after pictures of what 9 months stuck in space will do to you and your body. The details ahead as American Sunrise rolls on, as Gina would say, an FF of Freedom Friday.
These are stars. Your screen is not black. You're not missing anything. This is live from the International Space Station. Really kind of cool. Welcome back to American Sunrise. Kind of cool, too, that you're here with us. This Freedom Friday, this Puppy Friday, as a matter of fact. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us. Time now for today's health news, sponsored by The Wellness Company. And under the microscope today, unbelievable what 9 months in space can do to an astronaut's mind and body. I'll get this. NASA astronauts, say that 3 times fast, Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams will have to finally Well, they've returned to Earth, so they're going to have to deal with the health implications of that. Health experts warn that their prolonged stay in space could have some negative impacts. Changing pressures in the brain, muscle, and bone loss, cognitive decline can even occur. Astronaut Scott Kelly spent a record-breaking 340 days in space with his twin brother, Senator Mark Kelly, as part of a NASA study of what happens when one's in space and one's not. He spoke about how long a stay in zero-gravity environment can take on a serious toll on the body. Here we go. Listen to this.
So there are things that we need to know more about if we're going to spend a longer time in space. And when we're in that space environment, things happen to our physiology similar to when we age, but at a much accelerated rate. We lose bone mass 1% a month if we didn't do anything about it. Muscle mass, there's effects on our vision, which is we're trying to understand. And there's also genetic effects. There's a lot of radiation in space, and that can affect us on a cellular level. And that was part of the study with my brother and I, this twin study, to understand that more. So these problems are things that we have to solve to someday stay in space for much longer periods of time.
Now, apparently, according to the Kelly twin study, it can cause Trump derangement syndrome as well. That is your Friday, Dr. Gina humor. It's a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. Thank goodness. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but the reality is there's a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is the forces responsible for breaking it aren't going to go away. Challenges won't disappear overnight, you guys, so now more than ever, you want to be prepared, and that's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals. You can trust them. Their line of prescription med kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist you in the proper use of the kits. From the flu to strep, through COVID to bird flu, a trip to the beach, a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again. It starts at home, you guys. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAB. Today, give it an order. That's twc.health/RAB. Use the promo code RAB. That'll save you 10%. All right, love him or hate him like the Kelly twins do. President Trump is without a doubt one of the funniest politicians America has ever seen. And Sleepy Joe Biden was the latest subject of Trump humor. David Brody, take it away.
Yeah, well, Biden gives so much material to Trump and everybody, for sure, Gina. So during a recent interview, President Trump poked fun at Joe Biden, saying he admired how quickly and in seemingly uncomfortable positions Biden could fall asleep. Sleepy Joe was photographed numerous times, obviously lounging on beach chairs while our country suffered under his administration's leadership. But President Trump found a way to joke about his former opponent's love for an afternoon nap despite Biden's failures as president. Take a look at this.
Well, the only thing I totally admired about Sleepy Joe Biden is the following. He'd go to a beach. He'd lay down in a cot, barely able to get his feet through the sand. He'd lay down, and within minutes he's sleeping, and you have cameras watching him. I could never do that. I would never be able to sleep like that. That's about the only thing I think that was wonderful. He was a disaster. This man was a disaster. I don't sleep much. You don't sleep much. A lot of people that love what they're doing don't sleep much, I find. And so far it's been okay.
And he does 2 shows nightly and signs executive orders as well. All right, joining us now with the reaction is author, podcaster, Hannah Faulkner. Hannah, the author of Last Chance to Save Our Republic. Welcome, Hannah. Great to have you on the show. As always, we love having you. So, this humor from the president has never been really fully understood or appreciated, definitely by the liberal press, but also for those who just simply don't know him. He's both the president and definitely a great stand-up comedian as well, Hannah.
Oh man, he is getting it done. It is incredible to see. He's quite the comedian. He lets them know exactly what he's thinking. He doesn't hold anything back. And I think that's why Americans came out for him on November 5th, 2024. You know what? I saw a statistic. It said 45% of Joe Biden's presidency was spent on vacation. That's probably his presidency. The Biden-Harris regime has probably been one of the largest cover-ups in American history. Frankly, it's disgusting. It's so exciting to see a president that's finally not only getting stuff done, but he is pulling back the curtains on decades upon decades worth of corruption and fraud that these globalist oligarchs have tried to hide from the American people. I mean, you look at these JFK files, thousands upon thousands of these JFK files that many political influencers like yourselves that have been alive for a lot longer than I have and talking about this for a lot longer than I've been alive, about how JFK was a cover-up. It was an inside job, and they have been lying to the American people, calling us the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists for the problems and the cover-ups that they've created. So it's finally exciting. It gives me so much hope to see a lot of this truth coming to light. I mean, George Washington said, sometimes it takes a little pain to bring the truth to light. And while COVID-19 was definitely a curse and it left a stain on this nation and our world, but I believe it was partly a blessing too, because it really opened the eyes to not just the American people, but our entire world to this corruption, the manipulation tactics, and all that they're trying to hide from the world.
Hannah, Vice President J.D. Vance makes for a pretty funny sidekick to President Trump, too. This week, he joked that his predecessor, Kamala Harris, used to drink 4 shots of vodka before every meeting. Vance said maybe that's why she was always blurting out word salad. Take a listen.
How are you doing the job differently than Kamala did it?
Well, I don't have 4 shots of vodka before every meeting. That's one way I think that Kamala really tried to bring herself into the role is these word salads, and I think that I would need the help of a lot of alcohol to answer a question the way that Kamala Harris answered questions. I mean, look, man, I don't know. My sense is, and this is a little bit of guesswork. Obviously, I don't talk to Kamala Harris or Joe Biden very often, but my sense is that.
Hannah, 20 seconds.
Oh, man. Well, Kamala Harris has been arguably the greatest joke. I mean, you look even at Elizabeth Warren. She said on CNN that Kamala Harris's greatest achievement as vice president is that she visited more Planned Parenthoods than any other vice president. So what the Democrats think is that Kamala Harris is great and she should have been the first female president of the United States because she supports the racist eugenicist organization Planned Parenthood that is also the largest provider of cross-sex hormones that's sterilizing children. It's prescribing hormones to women that are destroying their minds and their bodies and telling them that in order for them to be successful, they need to take a pill that's going to murder their child. And they are also the largest provider in sex education that's destroying the minds of young people every single day in public education or in indoctrination camps, as I call them.
That's Hannah Faulkner. She can get more out in 20 seconds than anyone else on television. Hannah, we appreciate and adore you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, God bless Hannah. You guys.
God bless you, too. All right, coming up, Dem Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer spews off a story that you won't believe what he said. Next and later, how should you express your faith in the world? Well, we're going to talk about that, too. We'll be right back.
champion.
Welcome back to the show. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. Now it's time to stay awake, not woke, brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. You know we try a lot of coffee around here, but 1775 coffee has quickly become a favorite among the Real America's Voice newsroom. It's roasted in the great state of Florida by folks who care about what goes into your cup, and it's produced in small batches, meaning it's always fresh and never sitting on a shelf for months. The beans come from small farms in Bolivia, which means it's real coffee. None of that cheap factory-produced stuff that gets churned out by the ton. If you're someone who likes coffee that's dark, smooth, and bold, you'll love this coffee for its rich flavor that boasts no bitterness and definitely no acidity. They also have a mushroom coffee blend. If you haven't tried that yet, it's not quite what you think. It tastes like real coffee, but gives you that extra brain boost with 5 functional mushrooms. If you're a K-cup drinker, you're covered too. Their pods are filled with actual fresh coffee, not powdered junk. So if you're like us and drink coffee every day, make it something good and from a company that shares your values. Just head to 1775coffee.com/RAV and use code RAV for 10% off your order. Give it a shot. You'll taste and feel the difference. All right, now that we are caffeinated, it is time to stay awake, not woke. And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer simply cannot stay away from the spotlight. Earlier this week, he went on The View to try and shame Americans for wanting to keep their own money. Listen to this blabber.
And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, the land and water that I own, or my employees? They hate government. Government's a barrier to people, a barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it, and we're united.
Okay. Yeah, that is enough to make you hit your breaking point. Luckily for us, David Zier, the host of Breaking Point on Real America's Voice, is here with reaction this morning. David, thank you so much for being with us on American Sunrise.
Yeah, good morning, Emily. Remember, Obama said the same thing. You didn't build that, right? This is what the Dems think of you and the business owners and the businesses they have built. People never ask for anything from government. These politicians hate you, and they're built different than you. And most small business owners and contractors don't have pensions, 401ks, Cadillac health insurance, life insurance. It costs $40,000 a year for a business owner to get family health insurance up here in the Northeast. So if you work for the government, in a lot of cases, you're taking care for the rest of your lives. And many public sector employees and politicians retire with A-Rod style payouts, receiving millions in premium health care coverage and pensions until their death. This is not the same for small business owners. And yes, Chuck, government is in the way, right? Why wouldn't anybody who owns a business and gets up every day at 4 a.m., who are 80 hours a week, want to pay the least amount of taxes possible, especially when that person looks around when they wake up and we're spending $180 billion a year on social services for illegal aliens. It's crazy.
It is crazy, David. I like the way you described that, an A-Rod kind of payout. I mean, I think it comes down to the American people at this point, right? We have to stop being ignorant. If these politicians hate us, like you say, David, it's time for us to vote them out. That is the beautiful thing about our democracy. Now, really quick, before we let you go, I do want to know, what do you have for us on Breaking Point this weekend? What can we expect? What's coming up?
Well, I got a great show. I got Jonathan Tobin from Jewish News Syndicate, Newsweek columnist, on Hamas violating the ceasefire, protecting our shipping lanes, exposing Schumer for his double standard, trying to placate the pro-Hamas crowd while also saying he's against anti-Semitism with his new book. And then I got J.C. Shepard, the founder of the fentanyl test, which is the first FDA-cleared over-the-counter fentanyl test kit. And he has aligned himself with the Trump administration as he's met with Homan, RFK Jr., the DEA chief. And then I got Greg Stenstrom about fair elections as Dems try to buy votes with government handouts. So don't miss it, 8 a.m. tomorrow.
David Zier, it sounds like it is going to be a great show. Everyone, make sure you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining American Sunrise this morning. Always love talking with you, David.
Appreciate it, Emily. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Now, coming up, some may say, you have faith, I have deeds. We'll discuss how you should express your faith in the world. Coming up next on American Sunrise. Make sure you're staying with us.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Time now for our moment of faith. It's brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, how we express our faith. You know, it's one thing to say you have a strong faith, quite another thing to actually practice your faith each and every day. From the book of James, James 2:18-19 tells us this. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You know, that Bible verse was recently posted by political scientist, legal scholar, Dr. Carol Swain. Carol, also the author of the book, The Adversity of Diversity. And she joins us now on American Sunrise. There is the book. Dr. Swain, great to have you with us. So what is the takeaway from that Bible message? Is it a reminder to practice what you preach, or tell us a little bit more about this?
I can tell you that the book of James is full of nuggets, and whenever God leads me to that book, you know, I sort of tremble because I wonder what I'm violating, talking too much, because it talks about the time. But go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
The important thing about the book of James is that our lives may be the only Bible that some people see. And I started back in December 2023 posting a Bible verse. It's usually the one that God is dealing with me about. And I think it's so important for us to realize that when we are out in public, all of us, we're being watched constantly. And even when we're not being watched by human beings, those of us who are people of faith, we know that God sees everything, including whether or not you return that grocery cart.
That's true. Great. So now you're telling me you have surveillance video of me last week. Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Swain. I appreciate that. Let me ask you, you recently joined Rav here and the Just the News show talking about the failures of DEI policies. I want to move on to this, specifically on college campuses. And of course, President Trump's administration is going to great lengths to end promoting DEI initiatives, not only in the federal government, but also higher education institutions. So talk to us about this effort. Obviously, it's a right step to end this type of discrimination at universities and get back to more merit-based education systems. But this is really a long time coming, and I'm wondering what you think, how long this type of effort will take, because once Trump is off the scene, the battle needs to keep going on here.
Well, first of all, the focus has been on DEI when the larger story is that the day after he signed the executive order eliminating DEI in federal programs, he signed an executive order overturning Johnson's 1965 affirmative action executive order. And that brings us back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. I don't believe those changes will be easily eradicated by the next Democrat president, because President Trump brought us into alignment with the laws of the land. We thought that President Reagan was going to do it. He didn't do it. Donald Trump did. And I think whether you're a Democrat, Republican, conservative, or liberal, you know that DEI became affirmative action on steroids, and affirmative action always violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So I believe that we are in a post-DEI, post-affirmative action world. That's where we're moving. And I will have a new book coming out next month titled Diversity Without Discrimination, How to Promote a Culture of Unity in a Post-Affirmative Action DEI world.
Well, we're looking forward to that, and we'll have you back on for that as well. Dr. Swain, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We appreciate everything.
Thank you.
All right. We are back with the second hour of American Sunrise on a Freedom Friday in 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on this second hour of American Sunrise, President Trump signs an executive order effectively eliminating the Department of Education. So, what does that ultimately mean for your children or your grandchildren? Hear directly from the president. Plus, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell speaks out about economic fears for the country. In moments, what he's blaming for the issues and what he's pointing to as key factors. Senate Republican leaders are demanding the unredacted Crossfire hurricane transcripts. What could be hidden? That story and so much more right now on this second hour of American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Dr. G in West Palm, T. Bates in our Denver newsroom on a Freedom Friday. You know, apparently Democrats, Gina, love to say that we're in this constitutional crisis. You know, they're all worried about Trump, which is kind of rich coming from a party that's actually in crisis.
Yeah, right. And the party, by the way, that created all the crises really over the last couple of decades. I mean, you look at every war. You look at the big topic of conversation, Jimmy Carter, when he created the DOE, he made a deal with the teachers' unions to endorse him. That's the first time the teachers' unions were that one-sided, and they became that one-sided ever since. So literally going back even to our crisis in education that President Trump is having to fix. Everything that has gone wrong, almost everything, including the wars, including the crisis of education, including the border crisis, including the identity crisis among teenagers. I mean, the list goes on and on. Terrance, it all happened under them. So they're ones to be talking about crisis.
Yeah, Dr. Gina, I'm glad you brought up the Department of Education because while part of President Trump's motivation for closing the DOE is, of course, improving the U.S. standing in global education rankings, a secondary reason is improving government efficiency. The latter extends to the Internal Revenue Service as a member of the Elon Musk-led Doge team claims that he has canceled technology modernization contracts worth $1.5 billion at that agency. Tech startup executive Sam Korkus says he found legacy contracts with outside technology consultants that were worth tens of billions of dollars, but the system upgrades being paid for were decades behind schedule, he says. Plus, there are institutional concerns that he has uncovered.
We process at the IRS about the same amount of data as a mid-sized bank. And a typical mid-sized bank will have somewhere between 1 and 200 people in IT, and they'll have an operations and maintenance budget in like the $20 million a year range. We have 8,000 people in IT, and our operations and maintenance budget is $3.5 billion a year. I don't really know why yet, but I will tell you that 80% of that budget goes to contractors and licenses. We cannot perform the basic functions of tax collection without paying a toll to all these contractors. We really have to figure out how to get out of this hole. We're in a really deep hole right now.
Wow, that's really enlightening there. Meantime, an American airline mechanic who was taken by the Taliban while he was traveling as a tourist through Afghanistan is headed home. George Glesman had been in Taliban captivity for 2 years. The State Department says his release was brokered in part by Qatari negotiators. After being taken by the Taliban's intelligence services in December of 2022, the U.S. government designated Glesman as wrongfully detained. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is out with a statement this morning saying in part, George's release is a positive and constructive step. It's also a reminder that other Americans are still detained in Afghanistan. President Trump will continue his tireless work to free all Americans unjustly detained around the world. The 65-year-old is the third American detainee released by the Taliban since January. A massive fire and subsequent power outage at London's Heathrow Airport is causing global flight problems at the moment. At least 1,341 flights to and from Heathrow are immediately being impacted as the airport is now shut down. The closure is having a ripple effect across the global flight grid. Investigators don't believe the fire was deliberately set, but they're leaving no stone unturned here. That includes terrorism or counterterrorism detectives being deployed to investigate. Friday is typically the busiest travel day at Heathrow. The airport says about 291,000 passengers are dealing with flight disruptions at the moment, and again, that is just at Heathrow Airport. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming your way here in just a little bit, but now let's get you back over to David.
Okay, Terrance, appreciate it. President Trump signed an executive order, as we've been talking about this morning, that will fully dismantle the Department of Education, basically turn much of the decision-making and power to the states. Take a look.
And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right. And I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. And we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country. And we haven't for a long time.
He says ultimately it may come before them. That's true. The department cannot be fully eliminated without congressional approval. And we should note that Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana says he plans to immediately introduce legislation to get rid of the department. It's a story we're definitely going to be monitoring. For more, let's bring in the president of America First Works, Ashley Hayek. Ashley, great to have you on the show. Look, this was a major promise kept from President Trump, and we can add this one to the list. And it really does rank near the top. What should parents understand about this executive order? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. And that's what the Department of Education has been doing. We are failing. We pay the highest amount per student in the world, and we're absolutely doing terribly internationally. And then you look at the 13 states that have advanced school choice measures and giving parents control over their children's education, and you see growth and wins and opportunity. So this is really a step forward for parents. It's a win for parents so that we can ultimately have that control back and do what's best for our kids and provide an individualized plan for each one of our children and our students.
Ashley, all of this conversation also boils down to making sure that our government runs efficiently and that the money that's being spent on these various agencies are being spent in the right way. And so that gets me to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, who is now blaming President Trump's use of tariffs for continually rising inflation. Watch this, and I'd like to get your response on the other side.
Okay, so how much of it is tariffs? So let me say that it is going to be very difficult to have a precise assessment of how much of inflation is coming from tariffs and from other, and that's already the case. You may have seen that goods inflation moved up pretty significantly in the first 2 months of the year. Trying to track that back to actual tariff increases, given what was tariffed and what was not, very, very challenging. So some of it, the answer is clearly some of it. A good part of it is coming from tariffs, but we'll be working, and so will other forecasters, to try to find the best possible way to separate non-tariff inflation from tariff inflation.
All right, Ashley. So President Trump fundamentally argues that tariffs is a way to level the playing field when it comes to our trade partners. What do you think is going to ultimately come out of all of this? How will this ultimately shake out?
Well, I think it's rich coming from a man and who worked during an administration that told us the inflation was transitory and did absolutely nothing to address the inflation that we've experienced for the past 4 years. What we saw during Trump 1, during the first administration, is that tariffs were a matter of putting us on a fair and level playing field. We saw that tariffs worked. They brought back jobs to the United States. We need a manufacturing boom in this country, and it's not just for an economic purpose, it's for a national security purpose. And so that's what this president is going to do. It increased jobs. It lowered inflation. If you look at term 1, inflation was like 1.3%. You look at countries like China that have crazy tariffs, they don't have an inflation issue. So this is the Fed trying to probably get a dig in at our great president. At the end of the day, this is going to be a solution to a lot of our issues, and it's just the beginning.
Ashley, Senate Republican leaders are demanding the unredacted interview transcripts from Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley asked Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kash Patel for immediate action to remove the redaction. How important is this?
I think this goes back to the point of transparency in government. And this is what the American people, we have not forgotten what they put President Trump through during the first term with the Russian collusion hoax. And it's time for those people who were responsible for that to be held accountable. And that's what I think this administration is really doing. They're holding people accountable for the waste of time and taxpayer dollars, wrongly going after an innocent president. And so hopefully all of that will come to a head and we can get some justice for these malicious lies against President Trump.
Ashley, let me get to some of the news of the day. Later this morning, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth will be inside the Oval Office where President Trump will make remarks. I'm assuming this judge who's blocking the president's transgender military ban is going to come up. Hegseth says he's going to fight it. I'm curious to get your take on that.
And he absolutely should fight it. Enough is enough with these rogue activist judges. They're supposed to be ruling based on the Constitution, not trying to push their woke agendas. I would like to see if there's any opportunity to impeach some of these judges and make them defend themselves on their own dime. But, you know, this is something that's part of the leadership and the promises made by President Trump. And I look forward to, you know, using the law as best as possible, maybe taking it to the Supreme Court.
You know, one of the things I find interesting about this administration is that it's testing some, and I call them traditional constitutional values. Can you comment on that? I'd love to get your perspective, and I always like to get people's thoughts on how this administration is going about testing the Constitution and I guess kind of testing it based on today's value system, if you will.
I don't think it's testing necessarily the Constitution. It's bringing us back to the Constitution. We have had a rogue, running wild, bureaucratic state run by the elite 1% of this country for far too long. President Trump has made it very clear. It's about we, the people. And so when he brings these judicial challenges forward, when he's saying we need to get back to common sense, that's what he's trying to do. It's not a matter of, you know, testing the Constitution. Yes, he's a disruptor because he's disrupting that bureaucratic administrative state. And that's why the American people gave him mandate and put him in office on November 5th.
That's exactly right, Ashley. Totally agree with you. And shame on John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the United States, to get involved. I mean, go ahead. I can tell you're itching to talk about it. He should probably recuse himself, by the way, if that Alien Enemies Act case ever gets to the Supreme Court. He's tainted himself.
Yeah, and I think there should be some more education to the American people on a lot of these issues. I think that just if we had spent more time talking about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, our country's history, instead of woke DEI gender issues, there wouldn't be so much confusion as to, you know, what our rights are and what the Constitution means to our country.
Totally agree. The living, breathing Constitution from liberals. Oh, give me a break. Their parties right now not living or breathing, so maybe they should think about that. All right, Ashley Hyatt, great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Ashley.
Coming up, the Trump administration has vowed to make America healthy again. In moments, the bold steps being taken by one company. They will be here. First, though, CBS News stooping to a new low, saying the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua is less morally questionable than President Trump. We don't make it up, we just report it. The shocking comments after the break.
back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. It is great to have you all with us this morning, and it is time now to drain the swamp. This morning we are flushing out CBS News. CBS News continues to hit new lows in its coverage of President Trump. CBS News is now insinuating that President Trump is worse than Venezuelan gang members. Newsbusters laid it out in this piece and said CBS said Trump is more morally questionable than gangsters. They claim that they are holding 31,000 people without due process and slammed the use of a law dating back to the 1790s. For more, let's bring in the host of Media Exposed, Adam Weiss. Adam, always great to see you. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
How disgusting is this from CBS News? I mean, it's not even a comparison.
I mean, do we put anything past the legacy mainstream media? I was just listening to a podcast, the All In podcast, at Howard Lutnick, and the Commerce Secretary, a new larger-than-life New York fig. He says, President Trump once told me, Howard, I've been on the cover of Time magazine 59 times. 39 of them are negative, and he earns it with a badge of honor. So doesn't put it past it. They've stooped to the level, the media I've learned recently, to defending gang members, defending rapists, defending these crazy USID. So the things that they're defending lately, they used to be able to defend the mom who's going to lose Social Security, the welfare recipient. Now that's so ridiculous. They're going to lose more of their viewers, and they're going to be more of their approval. Their viewership's going to way down what they're, basing their programming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Until they just waste away to nothing. We've seen such a decline already through all of the mainstream media right now. But it just kind of feels like, read the room, right? Over the past 4 years, the American people have suffered so much from migrant gangs like this, the ones that they're comparing President Trump to. I mean, they're doing this now. They compared him to Hitler in the past. Adam, what's next? What's up their sleeves next to compare the president to?
But I'm noticing it when they're running these segments, they're not even telling the truth. They're flat out saying, migrants. They're not saying rapists or gang members or criminals. So they're just misleading the public over and over again. So they'll continue to lose viewership. I thought with the culture shift, there possibly might be a shift in mainstream media, but I doubt it. It hasn't happening. They're getting more as the resistance. So, but the tent's grown so much that they're not taking the effect as they used to be, and they're not swaying the public like they used to be. So that's a good thing. We've opened up the floodgates, just like the White House correspondents and White House press room. We've opened it up to so many more voices, and that's a good thing in America.
Absolutely. And I think, that shift that you were talking about, Adam, it's really not going to be a cultural shift like through the mainstream media. It's going to be through online platforms, through digital platforms, through streaming, through a different way of consuming news. And Adam, I know that you are an expert when it comes to the media. What do you have coming up for us this weekend on Media Exposed?
When I'm taking a deeper look, I noticed there was this trend in congressional districts that they were these town halls were popping up. And then I noticed Congresswoman Nancy Mace said, I'm not going to this town hall. It's fake. And then I saw the local congressman out in Eastern Long Island, Nicholas, says, he sent out an email said, I'm not going. It's fake. It was run by the Communist Party of Long Island. So these AstroTurf fake town halls they're doing in the congressional districts, they do the town halls. The congressman shows up. He gets booed. He gets chastised. The media picks it up. So the Republicans aren't falling into fold anymore. I'm going to look at the issue we talked about. I'm going to do a deeper look into that, how the media is covering this. And I'm going to take a look at some Hollywood entertainment stuff, Alec Baldwin and his wife, their new show, and the little scuffle they had, and how they're treating each other and how the media is playing that.
Yeah, that was certainly getting a lot of pickup on social media platforms, that clip between him and his wife. It sounds like you have a lot coming up this weekend for us, Adam. Our viewers definitely don't want to miss out. Thank you so much for joining American Sunrise this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good weekend.
You too. Now, coming up later in the show, the Oath Keepers founder is calling on President Trump to issue him a full pardon for his role in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. He joined Real America's Voice to state his case, and we'll show you exactly why he believes Trump should be bolder with his actions for J6ers. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
this is Port Jefferson, Long Island. Long Island. Gotta pronounce the G too. So good to have you along for the ride on this Friday morning, everyone. We appreciate it. We're gonna get you to the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange here in about 7 minutes. I can tell you right now, the board not looking good at all. Look at all that red right now. Again, this is pre-market trading, so hopefully once the bell rings and the market's officially open, things will change for us. But at the moment, the Dow, S&P 500, NASDAQ, gold, silver, crude oil, and just about everything else is in the red. Again, we'll take you to New York for the opening bell here in just a little bit. Now, let's get you back over to West Palm or the Palm Beaches. Dr. Gina is there. She is just back from New York, where she rang the bell at the NASDAQ yesterday. Good to have you back, Dr. G.
Mentioned on the show yesterday, I was able to take part in ringing the bell on NASDAQ, a pretty cool thing. And we won't forget that that was something you would never forget once you've done that. It's the coolest thing ever. 150 companies get to take part in that every year. That's it. And that is ringing the opening bell for NASDAQ. I'm peeking back there, your screen left. It was lots of fun and a huge honor. I was with a company called Wellgistics, who's all about making America healthy again and cutting through the bureaucracy of the healthcare industry to bring savings to actual real Americans, the consumers. For full disclosure, I do some consulting for the company, and I am now joined by the man who was center stage yesterday on the NASDAQ. That is the CEO of Wellgistics himself, Brian Norton. Brian, super exciting things that companies like Wellgistics are doing. The number one thing is really getting to the heart of transparency, because consumers need this to keep down costs. Explain how Wellgistics is doing that.
Yes, well, it's such a good thing to talk about right now, Gina, and I'm so grateful to be on with you. You know, Americans right now, we have a real crisis where we're prioritizing profits over patients. And so as we look at what's happening in America, 1 out of every 4 Americans, they go to the pharmacy and they don't fill their prescription drug. So when we talk about making America healthy again, that's a massive number. And when we look at literally last year, I think there was the report was 150,000 deaths reported because Americans weren't taking their prescription drugs appropriately. And Americans get to the counter of their pharmacy and they can't afford to pay for their prescription drugs today. It's a real crisis and we need to do something about it.
Well, Big Pharma has been demonized, and I'm not going to say that Big Pharma isn't to blame. They are one of the number one, if not the number one, lobby in the whole United States. But these PBMs are something we're hearing more and more about. Talk to us about what the private sector can do to battle back at some of the damage done by PBMs.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because we've heard that Big Pharma is the problem, but it's actually not really Big Pharma. It is big PBM. It's big insurance. If you look at what's happening in America right now, in the pharmaceutical sector, for every dollar that's spent on a brand name, only 36 cents actually goes to the manufacturer. So the one that made the drug, brought it to market, invested all the money, went through the clinical trials, 36 cents goes to them. The rest of the money, it goes to 2. It goes to the PBM or the insurance, or it goes to the wholesaler. And when you look at the PBMs, there's only 3 that really rule the market. 3 of them run 80% of the insurance that's covered in America for prescriptions. Of the wholesalers, there's only 3 that cover 80% of the wholesale market. So what we have happening right now is we have a monopoly, we have an oligopoly actually of basically 2 different industries that are completely controlling the pricing of prescription drugs in America. And we sit back and wonder, why are we having such a problem? Well, it's because there's no competition. We have 2 major industries completely controlling it, manipulating price, running rebate schemes, and having formulary manipulations, which ultimately causes the pain when a everyday consumer shows up at the pharmacy and can't afford their drugs.
But what's this going to mean to the average consumer? Give us an example. If I go today and buy something, this transparency and all the reforms you're talking about with RFK and the things that private industry are doing and companies like yours, what's that really going to mean to me when I go to get my medicine?
Sure. Well, if you look at, if the average is somewhere between a 40 to 70% swing that you see being taken out and given to the big corporations, I think the statistic in 2022 was $300 billion went to the PBMs. We put that back into the industry and into the pockets of the American people, and it means massive savings. What it means is when you show up at the pharmacy, you actually get your prescription drug. So if 1 out of every 4 Americans don't get their drug, now we're starting to see that they get their drug. It also means that they can afford their drug. But what's also happened, that we see happening so much in America today, is that nobody knows the price of a drug.
Right.
So when you give them your card, which part of this has to do with education of us American people, we have to be more educated. When we go in, we just want to slap our insurance card on the counter and just whatever they tell us, okay, I can afford it, I can't afford it. But what we're working on, and this is something that we're very excited about, are simple technologies where you can actually look at what a cash pay price would be for your prescription drug, type it in, and actually see that there's multiple discount companies that will compete within your local area and give you a cash pay price. So I might see a $45 copay on my insurance that goes to the PBM, by the way.
Yeah.
Or I can look and say, oh, it's only $6 if I pay cash.
And then you know.
So that tool, right? The tool is the simple thing. So we just want to bring more tools.
And giving the power back to the consumer, I think, is so exciting in this new parallel economy, as I like to call it. Brian Norton, congratulations again on Wellgistics. Yesterday, it was a big pleasure and honor for Rav to go along with you. And thank you again.
It was so fun. Thank you, Gina.
All right, let's head back to Terrance in Denver for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, sponsored, of course, by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
The applause is already underway at the New York Stock Exchange, which means the bell is going to ring here in short order, and then we'll see exactly what the markets are looking like. Well, just on cue, you hear the bell ringing, which means the markets are now officially open, and they are opening on a bad note right now. Here's our board, folks. Let's take a look. Everything is in the red. Dow is down, S&P 500, NASDAQ, gold, silver, and crude oil are also down right now. Hopefully, things can rebound, even though it is expected to be a topsy-turvy day on the markets today, but hopefully things will turn around, particularly if you're investing, and things will end up on a positive note. Well, folks, you don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs for the first part of this year. It's not too late for you to buy gold either, though. The company so many Americans trust to help diversify their portfolio with physical gold is the Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. Listen to this 5-star review. It's really simple. It simply reads, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. And that's what you get from the Birch Gold Group, and that's why so many people endorse the company. Get your free information kit on gold by texting the word America to the number 989898. There's no obligation here, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, if you text the word America to the number 989898, the experts at the Birch Gold Group can help you secure your future today with gold. Coming up here on American Sunrise, watch the ladies of The View get into a shouting match over Democrat Party infighting. Oh, this is going to be a good one. And then later, Senator Chuck Schumer's in hot water with his own party. A new poll shows his approval rating is down the tubes. We'll break it all down for you when we return.
All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to join our conversation on Getter and Rumble. And it is time now to take the political pulse of America. And on the beat today, the Southern Border RAV correspondent and host of Law and Border, Ben Bergquam, has all new exclusive reporting on the situation there. Here is a quick preview. Take a look.
We did it, Joe.
We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe.
We did it, Joe.
Oh, baby.
Welcome back to an all-new season of Law and Border. We have Ben Bergquam and Oscar Ramirez to take you on an unprecedented journey to show you all 8 ports of entry from the Mexico side of the border.
There's a lot of activity right here that is going on.
Our fearless frontline reporters will be starting out in Mexico City. Then they'll head north to the Gulf of Mexico, now named the Gulf of America, and all the way across to the Pacific Ocean and Tijuana. Keep in mind, all the while, they'll be passing through multiple cartel territories. And these areas are patrolled by heavily armed cartel criminals.
Keeping the camera down just for we're in a very hot zone.
And the only network to take you there is Real America's Voice News. So strap in because Season 5 of Law and Border begins now.
Don't tell anyone we're coming.
Now over to J6, where the founder of Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, was recently on Rav's own Cowboy Logic and is now calling on President Trump to go bolder with the pardons for J6ers. Take a look.
Right. So definitely, of course, appreciative and grateful for President Trump for getting me out of prison. But I was completely innocent, like so many, like my co-defendants, frankly, all of us. But there's 14 of us total that were commuted rather than pardoned. And we're still not quite sure why. But what that means is that although our prison sentences are ended and we're free, we are still, second-class citizens because we're all still felons. Felon, can't own a gun, can't, in Texas here, I can't vote. And I've also had all my veterans benefits stripped from me. I got a really nasty letter from the VA. In fact, I was being held in solitary confinement. I got the letter, and it said that I'm a service-connected disabled veteran. I was a paratrooper in the Army until I had a parachuting accident. So I've got a fused spine from that, and they sent me a letter saying, all that's wiped out. No more veterans benefits at all or health care. And I can't be buried in a veteran cemetery now. And I know Joe Biggs and Dominic Pizzola and Kenny Harrelson, we're all in the same boat. We're all in this position of being, second-class citizens and having our benefits stripped from us. We really need a pardon, and there's really no reason why we shouldn't be pardoned along with everybody else.
For more, let's bring in the host of Cowboy Logic, Donna Fiducia. Donna, can you expand on this conversation for us?
Absolutely, Dr. Gina, and good morning, everyone. Funny, Don and I actually disagreed with Stuart Rhodes on this, but he is a Yale-educated lawyer, so who are we to judge? But maybe now the truth will be forced to come out. That's the bigger picture. Oath Keepers were not pardoned, as Stuart said. They were just commuted. So this allows their case to remain open and litigated and can go forward. So maybe all of the discrepancies and, quite honestly, the lies that were told during all of January 6th may come out. Evidence tampering. They lied on the stand. They falsified evidence. Brady violations. You've got Capitol police officers that perjured themselves. So this could unravel everything because they have these appeals pending. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, in the meantime, the government just wants to drag things out. And the old DOJ knew that really the problem was the problem is that people just can't hold on this long. I mean, so many Jan 6ers have lost everything. Stuart Rhodes didn't even go into the Capitol, and he got 18 years. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. And look what's happening now with the Teslas being, torched everywhere, and people's businesses being torched. Nothing seems to happen to those people when all the Jan 6ers did really was a mostly peaceful process. So, they're out of prison. They're happy about that. But hopefully everything can be exposed at this point. And that's the only silver lining that we can find, that maybe
Donna,
the truth will finally come out.
A quick follow-up. What did you and Don disagree with Stuart Rhodes about specifically?
Well, he wanted the pardons immediately. And if that happens, then all of this information might not come out, David. That's the real thing. Mm-hmm. It's easy for us to say we don't have felonies now. We don't have quad S's when we try to go on a flight where, everything gets poked and prodded for almost 2 hours before we can get on a flight. Our rights haven't been taken away. We can still vote. If they were pardoned, that would not be the case. But in the meantime, all this other information that's been pushed underneath now, and it's like the government's saying, oops, sorry, we didn't really mean it, won't come out unless these appeals go forward.
So, Donna, what I'm hearing is that you're not necessarily fully satisfied with what's happened in respect to J6ers under the Trump administrations. Some positive steps have been made, but you still want more.
Well, I mean, their lives are ruined, Terrance. This, if this could be pushed faster, that would be awesome. But the way trials are, things go very slowly. So these pardons are going to drag on. In the meantime, someone like Stuart Rhodes can't earn a living, can't pass a background check, can't vote, can't have a gun. It's ridiculous. And that really is the punishment. This whole process is the punishment, and these people have been punished way too far. I mean, this guy, let's take this guy Boasberg, who's throwing all kinds, this Judge Boasberg, who's throwing all kinds of monkey wrenches into Trump's agenda. This is the same guy that oversaw the Ray Epps case, gave them a slap on the wrist. This is the guy that threw grannies in prison after Trump was elected and made their trials go forward and made them go to prison, even though it was like for a month or so. And then he wants Tren de Agua planes turned around. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. It's very frustrating, and I'm so close to some of these Jan 6ers. Some have been lucky to be able to maintain their homes, but most have lost everything. And so the pardons are helping, but unfortunately, things are just moving too slowly.
Well, Donna, the ladies of the View got into a heated argument about the direction of the Democrat Party. Stop and see if you agree with this.
The choice was not between a no vote on the partisan GOP spending bill and a possible shutdown. It was a choice between a no vote and forcing Republicans to explain why they walked away from that possibility of a bipartisan agreement. And the core disagreement was around a willingness to fight, even if that meant convincing the public that the harm from a shutdown was the fault of Trump and the Republicans, because they are going to do exactly what they are doing. They're taking money away from vets. They're going to take money from Social Security. They're going to take money. So let them hold the water for them. Let them hold the bag. Democrats in the House were prepared for that fight. Chuck Schumer caved.
They didn't have the votes in the House. Okay, so it would have been worse if he didn't concede. It would have been worse. And that's what was surprising about Pelosi saying that, because she knows from her experience as Speaker of the House that the negotiator told Chuck Schumer he did not have the votes. He could not get the votes. He shut it down. And one thing that changed my mind is yesterday I called him on the carpet and said, how are you leadership when you only get 9 Democrats to follow you? But then someone shared something that made me change a little of my perspective. They had exactly the number they needed to not shut down.
Donna, I don't know. All I hear is meh, 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 meh. I don't know if you heard anything, but I didn't hear anything. Go ahead.
It sounds like the teacher in Charlie Brown, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like, maybe I should. They had no problem closing down the entire country for 2 years. God forbid they close the government down for a day or two. I don't think any of us taxpayers would notice. And then you get Chuck Schumer on The View saying you don't have any right to your private property, essentially, and you don't have any right to earn a living. Has Chuck Schumer ever sign the front of a check? You know, we used to call him lens lice in New York. Whenever, there was a camera, man, he was right there with the comment. And the thing is, I really think Dr. Michael Savage said it the right way. Liberalism is a mental disorder. They are doubling down on stupidity at this point. They are at the lowest percentage of their popularity, and they're still doubling down. People are realizing it's my money, and I want to keep it. And he's saying the government can spend it better for you. USAID wants to come in and actually cut government waste. We don't have a credit card with an unlimited limit here. We can't keep printing money. We're eventually going to have a huge, I guess we can call it cold turkey. If we don't go cold turkey now, we are going to have some huge problems later on. We're spending what? I think we're adding $1 trillion in debt every 100 to 150 days. We can't keep going like this. But he doesn't care because he's never had a real job.
Well, Donna, to play off of your cold turkey reference, it looks like Chuck Schumer and his fellow Democrats are going through withdrawal right now. They are in free fall mode. Senate Minority Leader Schumer underwater with the left wing of his party. He's at a -8 among liberal Democrats and a -2 among very liberal Democrats. So what do you make of this? And I've always said, and I'm just going to throw this on out there, the Democrats have a policy issue and a personality issue. It's a combination. They've got poor policies, and people just don't like them anymore. Their personalities suck.
Well, listen to what Schumer said on The View. I mean, it almost looked like the ladies on The View couldn't believe what he was saying. You don't have a right to your water rights. You don't have a right to your private property. That really is the bottom line. They always let the cat out of the bag, don't they? They tell us what they're going to do, which is kind of scary. But on the other side, Terrance, I don't think the Republicans are doing any better. I mean, I just got to say, Speaker Johnson, do something. They can actually dissolve the D.C. court. That needs to be done, because these activist judges are not constitutionalists. These guys knew that if Trump got in, this was what they were going to do. They are actually pulling, in my opinion, a judicial coup on this country, and at this point getting away with it. So we need Speaker Johnson also to step up. I mean, it's great to dissolve the Department of Education, but again, that's an executive order. We have to make these things laws, and gee, wouldn't it be great if we dissolve the D.C. court and get rid of these judges? I mean, I could go on and on with some of the things these people have done that is just insane. And to turn around a Tren de Agua plane of terrorists, known of the worst kind, and equate them basically to grandma who walked through the Capitol on J6 for a few minutes is really, it really is, liberalism is a mental disorder. You can't make this stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Well, Donna Fiducia, you are awesome, and you can't make that up either. Thank you for being with us this Freedom Friday.
Hey, we will see you guys 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. tomorrow night, and again 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon on Cowboy Logic. By the way, Raven Harrison, dynamite in a dress, running in South Florida to try to flip a congressional seat, Florida 23, to red. Please look her up, folks. She's going to be on our show. Dr. Stella Emanuel and also J6er Jessica Watkins. We'll see you then.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. All right, you guys, you can't miss this clip of Real America's Voice Natalie Winters on a recent panel with grifter Christopher Steele. Stick around and watch how she pretty much destroyed and, discredited him. All of this when we return. We'll be right back.
Let's spill some tea.
All right, let's spill some tea, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCompany.com, and like I said, make sure to use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. All right, now time to spill some tea, and in the cup today, the must-see moment. One of Real America's Voice's very own destroys Christopher Steele over his fake Trump dossier. War Room's White House correspondent Natalie Winters sparred with Steele during a recent panel discussion on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Winters also brought up Hunter Biden's laptop, calling Steele a, quote, complete political hack and grifter. Oof. We all remember the now discredited dossier accusing President Trump of Russian collusion during his 2016 presidential campaign, and Winters made sure that Steele didn't forget it either. Watch this.
Reject the idea that smearing President Trump as a Russian agent or a Russian asset is somehow going to tank the MAGA movement. It's about putting America first, and the fact that you can still sit here and you have no actual evidence beside one random Russian meeting, and oh, we need to just continue to get more evidence. You're a complete political hack and grifter, and I wish the American political scene didn't have your voice in it.
Whoa, no collusion, no obstruction. She wasn't letting him get away with anything there. Let's bring in David, Terrance, and Dr. Gina for more. What is your reaction to that, you guys? Natalie just continues to impress me every time I see her.
Well, I certainly remember back in the day when Natalie was just getting started, and she was so young, and she could talk China like nobody else could talk China, and that has certainly not changed. She's only grown and deepened in her breadth and understanding, and it's just nice to see. You know, first of all, kudos also to Piers Morgan for giving a platform to independent journalists like Natalie in the face of those who really don't know what they're talking about and tend to spew lies, because a lot of times we see these panels and they're just packed with basically progressives and worse progressives, right? So it's nice to see that, Terrance.
And go ahead.
Go ahead, David. I'll yield and then I'll follow up. Go ahead, David.
No problem. We'll get to you. Don't you worry. No. A couple things. First of all, if you watch the whole clip, she goes for like a 2.5 minute soliloquy, and it's just amazing. It's a total teardown. Christopher Steele is sitting there going, "When is this segment over?" Because he had nothing. You know, she was like, "And another thing, and another thing." So I thought it was really impressive. I mean, it was definitely a bucket list situation for Natalie. You know, to be able to say that to Christopher Steele to his face after so many years of looking into all of this. So it was a pretty neat moment, Terrance.
No, absolutely. And one of the things I appreciate most, and Dr. Gina, this somewhat echoes what you had to say, kudos to Piers Morgan for opening up the conversation, for allowing this conversation to happen. Because let's just be honest, in the current climate, you never would have had that sort of balanced conversation. It would have been very one-sided. And so I'm glad that this conversation was allowed to happen, no matter where you stand on it. The fact that we're opening up the marketplace of ideas and adding to the marketplace of ideas, I think benefits us all.
Yeah, absolutely, Terrance. And David, to your point, I mean, she did. It was a 2-minute segment where she just kind of destroyed him, destroyed his position, destroyed his work. And, you know, afterwards, if you watch the entire clip, he gets on and it was a couple minutes of silence among the entire panel. I think they were all kind of shocked with Natalie, you know, kind of dropping the mic there. But he had a chance to respond, and she didn't let him get away with anything there either. She was kind of butting in and asking some questions on the things that he was saying. Really impressive to see. Thanks so much for the discussion, you guys. There is still a whole lot more coming up on American Sunrise. A 9-year-old boy saves his best friend. We'll show you exactly what went down on the playground after the break.
different music today.
That's my song.
And we're like, I'm waiting for the bump, and Colby's like, yeah, no, that's not happening.
I put in this request, and I jokingly said, and they found the song. This was a song from back, I guess I might have been in high school, and it was just popular.
The control room DJs were on it this morning.
There you go.
All right, you guys, welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. This is Colby. Thanks so much for joining us today. Time now for our Sunny Side Up. And in the pan today, a young North Carolina boy is being hailed a hero for saving his best friend from choking while on the playground. Check this out. 9-year-old Jason Branch was playing basketball when he noticed his bestie choking on a granola bar. The moment he jumps into action, dislodging the food from his friend's mouth with the Heimlich maneuver. It's all caught on the school's surveillance cameras. The boy's parents say they're impressed by how quickly he acted to save his friend. But for Branch, he says he was just doing his thing.
So last week, we were playing basketball, and he ate a granola bar, and then we started playing longer until he started choking. And then he was trying to say, hold on, but he couldn't because he was choking. I didn't know he was actually choking. So I just did my thing, which was a Heimlich.
Just did my thing. Branch said
I did my thing.
He learned how to do the Heimlich maneuver from watching YouTube. So maybe a little screen time for the kiddos isn't all that bad after all right? I don't know. What do you all think? Emily, Terrance, David?
You know, actually, I had a chance to watch a little bit more of this interview. They had a chance to interview his bestie, his friend that was choking on the granola bar, and he was so nonchalant about it. They were like, "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm good." Goes back to playing basketball immediately. I think it's awesome that these kids were able to kind of go back to normal after such a traumatic situation like that.
And it really goes to show that so much information is now at the fingertips of our children, and hopefully they're using that access for good, not for bad. But there's so much that can be learned that ultimately can benefit them. So kudos to him for finding that video on the Heimlich maneuver online.
Yeah, I don't really have the full context of the video, but it looks like he gives him the Heimlich maneuver, and then they just go back to playing basketball. Hey, okay, let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I love it. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, you guys, as always, great show today. Colby says he really enjoyed it, right? He's always catatonic by the end of the show. He's always like, yeah, I'm so chill here with all my buds. You guys have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday morning. Of course, it all starts at 8 a.m. We will see you then. Don't forget 7 a.m. also for Jake Novak with the early show. You guys coming up next, of course, War Room. And see what one.
Go T.
That's right.
Come on, Dr. Gina. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like
no,
it's
she's not going to do that. She's not going to do that. No, see, look at that. There's like literally no movement. I love it. All right, you dance off to the weekend.
Don't forget to go boldly now. Live the truth all weekend long.